He presses her for a reason, his voice laced with frustration, but her response is not one of opposition, but of deep understanding. She tells him she knows what it's like to want to be a hero for the people you care about, to help the one you love. However, that icy facade instantly melts away the moment the training breaks. As Haru innocently lifts his shirt to cool off from the heat, the stoic captain completely loses her composure. However, that icy facade instantly melts away the moment the training breaks. As Haru innocently lifts his shirt to cool off from the heat, the stoic captain completely loses her composure. Her face erupts into a deep blush as she stammers and averts her eyes, frantically accusing the young trainee of casting an indecent stare at her, even though she is clearly the one flustered by the sight of his skin. Haru, fully aware of the effect he has on his superior, doesn't back down but instead leans into the dynamic with a charming confidence that betrays his age, forcing Karen to stutter out defenseless denials. He teasingly points out her reaction, noting internally that this naive woman blushes the instant she is teased, and boldly suggests that if she wants to stare so much, she will have plenty of time to do so when they are alone later. While the rest of the regiment continues their exhausted routines in the background, Haru laughs lightheartedly at how adorable his captain, leaving Karen stand there clutching her sword, desperately trying to scold the novice for making fun of her while she struggles to contain her own pounding heart. Inside the office of the Imperial Knights Regiment, the atmosphere is heavy with what seems like a serious reprimand, but is actually a catastrophic misunderstanding of epic proportions. 16-year-old Haru stands before his superior, Captain Karen, having just made a request that has sent her mind spiraling into the gutter. Karen, the esteemed leader of the 4th Cavalry Unit known as the Black Hawk, sits with a flush rising on her cheeks, unable to process what she just heard. She asks him to repeat himself, her voice trembling with a mix of anticipation and dread, hoping she misheard the young knight. Haru, with the innocent determination of a subordinate wanting to improve, simply states that he wants to train with her, but his phrasing is just ambiguous enough that Karen, a 29-year-old elite with zero romantic experience, interprets it as a bold sexual proposition. Her brain short-circuits, effectively overheating as she screams internally, terrified and embarrassed that a novice would dare to make such indecent advances inside the holy castle. To her, this isn't a training request, it is a solicitation for an illicit affair, and she violently rejects him, slamming her hand down and shouting that there is no way she could accept such a thing, leaving Haru completely baffled by her explosive reaction. Haru tries to clarify that he just meant sword training, and the realization hits Karen like a physical blow. She deliberately excluded the word swords in her mind, exposing her own desperate thirst. She stands frozen, her face burning with a humiliation so deep it threatens to consume her, realizing she is the one who made it weird. Haru, realizing he has the upper hand, leans into the dynamic with a confident smirk, teasing that if the captain wishes for something else, he is always ready to oblige, fully enjoying the sight of his powerful superior reducing herself to a blushing mess. This proves to be too much for Karen's fragile pride. She snaps, drawing her sword in a panic and chasing him out of the room, desperate to beat the flip attitude out of him and restore some semblance of order to her racing heart. As Haru escapes the wrath of his beloved captain, the narrative rewinds to explain how this bizarre relationship began. Haru reflects on his status as a new knight, a top graduate with no noble pedigree, who was assigned to the Black Hawk unit earlier that year. He recalls the enrollment ceremony, a day that changed his life forever. Standing before the throne, Haru took the responsibility of representing the novices, but the moment he laid eyes on Captain Karen, logic and protocol evaporated from his mind. It was love at first sight. While others saw a terrifying commander, Haru saw the woman of his dreams, and his heart began to pound with an intensity he had never known. Overwhelmed by emotion, he abandoned his prepared speech, and in front of the entire assembly of knights and nobles, loudly asked Karen to go out with him. The hall fell into a stunned silence, the other knights staring in disbelief at the suicidal bravery of the new recruit. Karen, who had never been confessed to in her life due to her intimidating aura, stood frozen, her brain unable to compute the information. When she asked him to repeat it, hoping it was a hallucination, Haru doubled down, clarifying that he wanted a personal, romantic relationship with her. The shock was so severe that the elite captain, a warrior capable of slaying demons, simply ceased to function. Her legs gave out, and she collapsed face first onto the marble floor with a resounding thud. The incident sent the ceremony into chaos, with Haru panicking that he had killed her with his confession. Karen, desperate to salvage her dignity, scrambled to her feet with blood streaming from her nose, a clear sign of her internal overheating, and screamed that it was a trap, blaming the castle floor for her fall rather than admitting she had swooned like a schoolgirl. Since that day, Haru has been relentlessly pursuing her, launching gradual attacks on her heart, fully aware that beneath her scary exterior lies a pure maiden who has no idea how to handle affection. The story shifts to the present, deep within a dangerous forest, where a young boy cowers in terror before a massive skeletal tree demon. Haru intervenes just in time, placing himself between the monster and the child, but he is clearly outmatched by the creature's size and ferocity. Just as the situation looks dire, a blur of motion cuts through the air. Karen arrives, her expression focused and deadly, and with a single fluid strike, she cleaves the demon in two, displaying the overwhelming power that earned her the rank of captain. The threat neutralized, Karen stands amidst the dissipating smoke, her sword gleaming, looking every bit the hero. She immediately turns her stern gaze on the child, scolding him harshly for his recklessness in entering the demon-infested woods alone. The boy trembles, terrified by her anger, but Haru watches closely, knowing what comes next. Karen's anger melts away, and she pulls the crying child into a warm embrace, comforting him and whispering that she is just glad he is safe. It is this gap between her strict professionalism and her deep kindness that keeps Haru hopelessly in love, even if he still feels a lingering chill from the intensity of her blade earlier. Later that night, seeking to understand the strange mood Karen has been in, Haru tracks her to a tavern near the castle. Knowing he cannot approach her directly while off-duty, he uses transformation magic to disguise himself as an elderly man with a large turban and mustache, a disguise that is practically begging to be seen through. He spots Karen sitting with her friend Madeline, acting completely out of character by chugging mugs of ale with reckless abandon. Madeline, looking concerned, asks why the usually disciplined captain is drinking so heavily on a work night. Karen slams a wedding invitation onto the table. It is from a former classmate, a reminder that everyone around her is moving on with their lives while she remains stagnant. Madeline ruthlessly points out the uncomfortable truth. Karen is nearly 30, holds a terrifying job, and is viewed as unsold goods by society, likely destined to remain a virgin forever. The word virgin triggers a violent reaction from Karen, who screams at her friend to stop broadcasting her sexual status to the entire bar, her competitive spirit flaring up in defense of her lonely existence. Haru, sitting at the adjacent table and nursing a glass of water, listens intently with his attentive ear skill, feeling a mixture of pity and opportunity. Madeline suggests that Karen needs to save face by bringing a partner to the ceremony, proposing she hire a fake boyfriend. Haru nearly blows his cover, mentally screaming that he volunteers for the position and would happily turn the fake relationship into a real one. Karen, however, initially rejects the idea, her pride refusing to stoop to such deception. But as the bar erupts in cheers for a surprise birthday cake at another table, highlighting the joy of others, Karen's resolve crumbles. Madeline presses the issue, asking who she could possibly ask, and Karen, in her drunken vulnerability, begins to waver. Just as Karen is about to mutter a name, the bar's owner, a massive, muscular man inexplicably dressed in a bunny suit, grabs Haru by the head. The owner has realized that this old man has been eavesdropping for hours, ordering nothing but water, and promptly throws him out into the street. As Haru is physically ejected, missing the crucial part of the conversation, Karen finally admits to Madeleine that there is someone she could ask. Though she loudly proclaims to her friend that she would never invite a weakling like Haru, internally, she concedes that if he were just a little stronger, giving him a chance might not be so bad. Madeline, tired of the excuses, urges her to just marry the boy already. As Haru sits dazed on the pavement outside, having been tossed out by a man in a bunny suit, he remains unaware that the wheels of fate, and a fake dating scheme, have finally begun to turn in his favor. The frozen winds of the northern territories bite at the skin, a constant reminder of the harsh realities facing the Black Hawk unit. Haru, a 16-year-old knight who has somehow found himself in the orbit of the kingdom's most terrifyingly beautiful commander, reflects on the nature of their existence. The Black Hawk Regiment is not merely a group of soldiers. They are the tip of the spear, the primary battleground force deployed wherever the fighting is thickest. Whether it is deterring skirmishes with hostile nations to the east or suppressing elite-level monster outbreaks in the west, they are the ones called upon when the situation is dire. Concurrently, their deployment has brought them to a remote farm village in the northern reaches of the territory, a place buried under heavy snow and silence, operating under the grim logic that if anything goes wrong, the Black Hawks will handle it. Peace in this region is shattered by the sudden emergence of a reptilian monstrosity from a nearby cave, its roar echoing through the icy tunnels. Haru stands his ground against the beast, his sword drawn and his focus sharpened to a razor's edge. The monster, a hulking mass of muscle and scales, lunges with primal fury, but Haru does not flinch. He moves with a fluidity that belies his age, dodging the creature's claws and striking back with a decisive, lethal blow that cleaves through the darkness and the threat in a single motion. She warns him bluntly that she has no time to coddle eternal newbies, and that failure to improve will result in immediate termination. Haru hangs his head, apologizing profusely, reminded once again that when Karen is in work mode, she is an unrelenting force of nature. She protects the peace of the royal capital with zero compromise, swiftly firing anyone who shows weakness or lack of potential. Haru stands as one of the few survivors of her purging, quietly fearing her judgment like the rest of his peers. A soft blush colors her cheeks as she admits that, despite her harsh words, he did well without her help today. Haru follows her through the snow, reflecting on the complexity of his captain. Her subordinates fear her, yes, but they also respect her deeply because her judgment is flawless and her praise, when given, is genuine. Haru, however, pushes his luck, teasingly asking if he can be scolded more, which flusters Karen into realizing just how much of a pervert she has become for enjoying his company, calling herself out internally for her own indecency. As they look over the snow-covered village, Haru thinks to himself that whether it is the candy of her praise or the whip of her discipline, everything Karen gives him is a reward he cherishes. They arrive at a traditional inn, a wooden structure glowing warmly against the night sky, promising respite from the biting cold. The village is known for its hot springs, and Haru finds himself in a steam-filled paradise, feeling reborn as the hot water soaks into his tired muscles. He hums a tune, delighted by the luxury, believing that since he is the only one there, he can enjoy a lengthy, solitary soak before the next day's work. The air freezes. Haru stares, paralyzed. Karen stares back, her mind to process the visual information. For a split second, she deludes herself into thinking she sees a cute girl who looks like Haru, a desperate attempt by her brain to escape the reality of the situation. The realization dawns on both of them simultaneously. The elderly innkeeper, the granny with the knowing smirk, has orchestrated this accident on purpose. Haru, channeling every ounce of willpower he possesses, forces his face into a mask of stoic seriousness, a look usually reserved for life-or-death battles, all while frantic shudder sounds echo in his mind as he mentally captures this divine image. She had been grinning excessively when they checked in, and now her plot is laid bare. Haru realizes the granny must have intentionally misled them to force them into a mixed bathing situation, suspecting they were a couple or perhaps trying to play matchmaker. Karen is mortified, her mind racing with the implications of being in a relationship with a subordinate who is over 10 years her junior. She finds the idea outrageous, yet her blush betrays her. Haru, on the other hand, is internally celebrating the granny's meddling, vowing to give the old woman a massive tip for creating this miracle. Haru rushes to her side, ignoring his own nudity in his concern. Haru assures her he is just going to move it slightly to check for a sprain, his voice calm and reassuring. The pain fades, replaced by a warm sensation that seems to spread through her entire body. Karen bites her lip, her face burning hotter than the bathwater, unable to handle the sensory overload of his touch and the steam-filled atmosphere. Haru vehemently denies it, turning away with a flush of his own. though internally he admits that even just the lower half of Karen-san is irresistibly adorable. He notes with amusement that in these rustic villages, sleeping on the floor is the norm, but the implication of the bedding arrangement is not lost on him. He dives into the futon, finding it surprisingly warm and comfortable, and immediately begins to drift off, his thoughts filled with dreams of Karen. He closes his eyes, ready for a peaceful rest. Outside, snow continues to pile up on the roof, sealing them in this quiet, intimate world. The door open again. She sees Haru lying there and assumes he is already asleep. Moving quietly, she crawls across the tatami, perhaps intending to retrieve something or simply check on him. As she hovers over him, Haru opens his eyes. Haru, never one to miss a beat, asks with a teasing grin if she was planning to kiss him in his sleep. Karen's brain snaps. She rears back and delivers a devastating headbutt directly to his forehead. Karen stands over him, panting, realizing she may have just assaulted her subordinate again out of sheer panic. Haru nurses the bump on his head, noting that Karen is physically thick-headed in addition to being stubborn. Karen retreats to the corner of the room, wrapping herself in a blanket like a cocoon, traumatized by her own actions. Haru points out the obvious. This is his room, or rather, it is their room. The realization hits them both. The granny has struck again. The innkeeper is asleep, meaning no changes can be made. Haru, seizing the opportunity, cheerfully suggests they sleep together. Karen explodes with denial, her face turning a deep scarlet as she stammers that it is impossible for an unmarried man and woman to share a futon. Haru clarifies he was joking, but the reality remains, there is only one bed. Karen, stubborn to the end, declares she will sleep on the hard tatami floor and leaves the futon to him. The wind howls outside, dropping the temperature in the room rapidly. Karen refuses to take the bed from her subordinate, caught in a loop of professional ethics and physical misery. Haru sighs, realizing logic won't work. He changes tactics. He smiles with a mischievous glint in his eye, asking what she thinks he should do. Karen looks at him, shivering, her resolve crumbling under the cold and his persistent gaze. The snow continues to fall on the silent village. Karen wonders how her life ended up like this. Under the covers, their feet accidentally brush against each other. The contact sends a jolt of electricity through Karen, causing her to gasp and blush furiously. She turns to look at Haru, only to find that he has already fallen asleep, a peaceful, happy expression on his face, murmuring her name in his dreams. Karen watches him, her annoyance fading into a soft, affectionate look. She calls him a brat, whispering that he is too easygoing. Yet, as she gazes at his sleeping face, she admits to herself that he has strange tastes to choose her when he could have any younger, cuter girl he wanted. She resolves to work him even harder tomorrow to hide her embarrassment. Karen asks what is wrong, concerned that perhaps the sleeping arrangement upset him. It is, in his mind, the failure of a lifetime. Karen, misunderstanding his gloom, assumes he is physically tired and lectures him on regulating his condition. While he slept like a log, she spent the entire night wide awake, her heart racing too fast to find any rest. Haru smiles, knowing that despite the misunderstandings and the headbutts, they have grown just a little bit closer. Haru wakes up in his bachelor's dormitory room feeling like a living corpse, the weight of the day already pressing down on him. It's a beautiful morning with perfect weather, and he's physically fit, yet his spirit is utterly crushed. The reason is simple. Captain Karen has the day off. For Haru, whose happiness is directly tied to her presence, a workday without her is just a painful chore. He lies in bed, sighing dramatically, feeling like a salaryman dreading Monday morning. His mind drifts back to the previous day when he tried to ask Karen about her plans. She had snapped at him, blushing furiously and shouting that it had nothing to do with him, effectively stonewalling his curiosity. But Haru isn't stupid. He remembers the conversation from the bar a month ago and deduces that today must be the day of the wedding ceremony she was dreading. She's attending the marriage of a friend, an event that is clearly a minefield for a single, 29-year-old career woman. Haru feels a pang of disappointment, realizing that in the end, she didn't invite him to be her partner, leaving her to face the wolves alone. He imagines her embarrassment at the thought of asking a subordinate like him, which only makes him want to help her more. Dragging himself out of bed out of pure habit, Haru puts on his uniform, wondering if Karen managed to find someone else to go with her. though the thought leaves a bitter taste in his mouth. Just as he finishes dressing, resigned to a day of dull labor, a knock at the door breaks his train of thought. He opens it, expecting a colleague or perhaps a delivery, but instead finds himself face to face with a girl who looks vaguely familiar. Before he can even process her presence, she slaps him across the face with a force that sends him reeling. Stunned and clutching his cheek, Haru looks up at his assailant, a girl with twin tails and an expression of pure, unadulterated rage. She points an accusing finger at him, shouting about humiliation and how he hasn't changed a bit. She screams that her name is Mulberry, like the circular fruit, and that she is now assigned to the elite 1st Cavalry Unit, also known as the White Cross. Haru's memory finally clicks. He remembers a girl from 3 years ago, right after the entrance ceremony, who had declared him her rival. Mulberry, then a 13-year-old with a massive ego, had proclaimed herself the future top graduate. Haru, equally talented but infinitely less interested in rivalry, had simply brushed her off, asking if he could leave because he had business to attend to. That dismissal had ignited a one-sided rivalry that spanned their entire academy life. Every time they competed, Mulberry would vow to beat him, and every time Haru would win effortlessly while barely acknowledging her existence, leaving her seething in second place. Now, standing at his door, she demands his attention again. Haru, his patience wearing thin, asks what she wants since he has to go to work. Mulberry smiles triumphantly, informing him that today is a national holiday, a concept that Haru, a workaholic slave to the Black Hawk unit, has apparently forgotten exists. She reveals her true purpose. She is attending the marriage ceremony of a senior officer from her division, and has come to recruit Haru. She holds up an invitation with a royal seal, her expression shifting from anger to a smug confidence. Mulberry, misinterpreting his shock as awe at her status, blushes and stammers when he grabs her shoulders, demanding to know if this is the invitation. Haru's intensity catches her off guard, and she nods, confused by his sudden enthusiasm. Haru's mind races. This is his chance. He leans in close, his eyes burning with determination, and asks her to tell him everything. The scene shifts to a grand church, where the wedding is taking place. The priest asks the groom if he swears to love his partner until death, and the groom, a handsome man, confidently says, "I swear." The bride, equally beautiful, affirms her vows. In this country, the suitable marriage age is considered to be up to 25, a statistic that hangs heavy over the head of Captain Karen. She watches the kiss with a mixture of envy and resignation, her own romantic life a barren wasteland compared to the joy before her. Mulberry comments that the ceremony was strictly for relatives and high-ranking officials, so they will be joining the buffet party outside. She adds a snarky remark about not complaining when someone chooses to get married, clearly enjoying the social event. Haru, however, is laser-focused on one thing: finding Karen. Haru watches her, his heart aching. He knows exactly what she's doing, binge-eating to cope with the crushing social pressure and loneliness. A man nearby comments snidely that her behavior is unseemly for a woman, but expected of a captain, while a woman beside him laughs that she is quite hardy. The whispers grow darker, labeling her a spinster who missed her shot at marriage, a cautionary tale for young women. Karen hears every word. Tears prick at the corners of her eyes as she aggressively chews her food, trying to drown out the ridicule with meat and mental fortitude. She tells herself it's better to just work, that she wants to go home, but the pain is evident. Haru sees right through her tough exterior. He knows that beneath the armor and the appetite, she is deeply hurt. She follows his gaze and spots Karen, immediately recognizing the famous captain. Haru's expression darkens as he watches Karen's unhappiness. Mulberry, sensing an opportunity to network, asks if he knows her. Haru admits he does, and Mulberry comments on Karen's beauty, which surpasses her imagination. Haru agrees, calling her angelic both in and out of work, a statement that surprises Mulberry with its sincerity. He recalls seeing Karen comfort a lost child and fight demons, knowing her true character is far superior to the gossiping nobles around them. Haru approaches Karen, calling out to her. Karen, mid-bite with a mouthful of food, freezes in horror. Haru rushes to her side, wiping her mouth with a napkin and scolding her gently for her lack of manners, pointing out that both her hands are occupied with food. Mulberry watches the interaction with wide eyes, realizing that the rumors of the demon captain might be exaggerated, or at least Haru has a unique effect on her. However, in the next breath, she ruins the moment by grabbing Karen's waist and commenting on her magnificent armor, urging her to show more pride. Karen is taken aback by the girl's forwardness. Mulberry launches into a speech about how Karen works day and night for the capital and has no reason to look down on herself, essentially lecturing a superior officer. Karen stares at her, stunned, then blushes, touched by the unexpected defense from a stranger. Haru smiles, watching the two women interact. Mulberry encourages Karen to come see Haru in action with the white unit, claiming his brilliance stands out even more beside her, though she phrases it in a way that accidentally insults Karen's own brilliance. Haru notices that the nasty gossip around them has stopped. The presence of a member of the elite White Cross unit alongside the Black Hawk captain has silenced the critics. Just as the atmosphere lightens, a new figure approaches. It is Madeline, the friend Karen was drinking with at the bar, dressed in a stunning gown. She introduces herself to Haru, revealing she is a magic researcher and Karen's former classmate. She shakes Haru's hand, thanking him for looking out for her friend. She leans in close, whispering that she's counting on him to take care of Karen, acknowledging that while Karen can be difficult, she is a good person. Haru realizes Madeline had seen him snooping in the bar that night and knows exactly how he feels. He vows to her that he will never cause Karen to be sad. Suddenly, the crowd shifts. The bride is preparing to toss the bouquet. Madeline explains the superstition. Whoever catches it will be the next to marry. She urges Karen to join the group of women gathering, but Karen refuses, calling it a stupid ritual. Mulberry, however, is interested and drags Karen along, ignoring her protests. The bride throws the bouquet high into the air. Women scream and reach for it, desperate for the blessing. Karen stands awkwardly in the back, looking like she wants to be anywhere else. But fate intervenes. A sudden gust of wind knocks the bouquet off course. It sails over the heads of the eager women and lands squarely in Karen's hands. The crowd goes silent, then erupts in polite applause. Karen stares at the flowers, horrified and embarrassed. Madeline teases her, asking if she knows what it means. Haru, standing nearby, innocently asks if it means she'll be happy. Madeline grins mischievously, revealing there is another meaning in the imperial capital. The first man who speaks to the woman who catches the bouquet is destined to be her husband. Karen and Haru stare at each other, realizing Haru was the first to speak to her. Karen turns a shade of red that defies physics, while Haru plays dumb, though internally he is screaming with joy. One weekend night, Haru finds himself brimming with nervous anticipation, his cheeks flushed and his eyes shifting restlessly. Finally, she sighs, telling him there's nothing wrong with the report and that he's free to leave, praising his hard work with a gentle smile. However, his courage fails him at the last second, and he rushes out, leaving Karen sighing in her office, muttering about how annoying he is. Karen leans back in her chair, her mind racing with possibilities. She wonders why Haru has been acting so strangely nervous about his day off. A dark thought creeps in. Maybe he's seeing someone. Her imagination runs wild, picturing Haru in a cafe with a cute, younger girl, sharing a romantic moment. The image stings. She compares herself, a ferocious girl nearing 30, to this imaginary rival and concludes that a young, graceful girl would indeed be better for him. Trying to mask her jealousy with indifference, she stretches, telling herself that even if it's true, it doesn't matter. She convinces herself that his obsession with her was just a fleeting impulse, a teenage phase. Yet, the relief she claims to feel rings hollow as she stares out at the moonlit sky, thanking the stars if he has finally stopped stalking her. Though her expression says otherwise, Haru, meanwhile, is not on a date. He is prowling the streets of the capital, his destination a nondescript building that looks like a simple mom-and-pop bookstore from the outside. Inside, the shelves are lined with textbooks and grimoires. But Haru knows the truth. There is an inner area split off by curtains where valuable books are sold. He slips into the ominously sealed room, his heart pounding. His eyes widen as he finds what he's looking for, a treasure trove of indecent literature. He picks up a book with a cover featuring a scantily clad woman entangled in vines, and his face erupts in a blush. He admits to himself that the woman looks vaguely similar to Karen. He knows the rules of the Black Hawk Regiment strictly forbid bringing anything other than daily necessities into the barracks, explicitly banning suspicious books. But Haru is a healthy teenage boy, and his stallion is rearing to go. So he convinces himself that one book won't hurt. He dives into the story, which features a demon king named Harry capturing a female knight named Caroline. The story within the book mirrors his fantasies disturbingly well. The demon king, who looks suspiciously like Haru, tells the captured knight, who looks exactly like Karen, that he likes older girls and wants to spoil her. The spoiling, however, involves tentacle-like feelers that secrete a mucus to heighten sensitivity. Haru reads on, captivated, watching the fictional knight succumb to the pleasure, her resistance melting away. Just as he's engrossed in the climax, a voice cuts through his fantasy. "So that's what you're into," Karen says, standing right behind him. Haru freezes, then leaps away in a panic, trying to hide the book behind his back. He stammers that it's just an investigation, but Karen isn't buying it. She stares at him with burning intensity, her face red, demanding to know if he thinks she came to buy erotic books too. Haru tries to deflect, pointing out that she usually works late, but Karen claims she finished early. The excuse is weak, and the tension in the small, curtained room is palpable. Karen, regaining her composure, puts her hands on her hips and accuses him of planning to buy the book. Haru desperately invents a lie about investigating books that might hinder the wholesome upbringing of minors, but Karen cuts him off. She acknowledges that his urges are inevitable for a healthy teenage boy. Then, with a blush that rivals his own, she asks a question that stops his heart. "Shall I do that with you then?" Haru stares at her, unable to comprehend what she's suggesting. The other patrons in the shop stare too, their mouths agape at the unfolding drama. She presses him for an answer, asking if he's going to up to it or not. Haru, his mind in the gutter, stammers that his heart isn't ready for this, in such a place. Karen calls him indecisive, her face a mask of vulnerability and desire. Haru looks at her, his resolve hardening. He realizes he can't back down now. He steps closer, blushing but determined. Karen closes her eyes, waiting. Haru whispers that he likes how vulnerable she is. Karen opens her eyes, confused. "Ada!" she cries out as she instinctively blocks his strike. She stares at him, bewildered. "Haru, what were you hoping for? I was talking about sword training, you know?" she says, a mischievous smirk replacing her earlier blush. Haru's face falls. He realizes he has completely misread the situation. He asks if she's against him asking to train, and Karen laughs, enjoying his embarrassment. She teases him, saying his heart wasn't ready for training, while Haru pouts, realizing he's been played like a fiddle. Karen wipes a tear from her eye, laughing at his expense, telling him she hopes he learned his lesson about toying around. She walks away, leaving Haru standing in the alley, defeated but also strangely captivated by her laughter. He watches her go, realizing that seeing her laugh like that is a victory in itself. Days later, Haru is back in the kitchen of the barracks, cooking breakfast. He hums a tune, enjoying the calm morning. Usually they have to gather early, but Karen had ordered everyone to arrive at the designated time today because of an internal audit. Suddenly, his door bursts open. Karen storms in, fully armed and accompanied by other knights, shouting for a surprise possessions inspection. Haru drops his fork, stunned. The internal audit was a lie. It's a raid. Karen and her team tear his room apart, searching for forbidden items like alcohol, cigarettes, and indecent books. They check under the bed, inside the closet, and even in his treasure chest. Karen is ruthless, determined to find something incriminating. She picks up a book, flipping through it, and scoffs that she can't imagine this is the room of a top graduate. It's just dictionaries and grimoires. Haru explains that he memorizes books instantly and gets rid of them, a convenient excuse that Karen seems to accept. She sighs, disappointed that she found nothing. But then she spots something, a mirror sitting on his desk. She picks it up, her eyes narrowing. "Or maybe you're just using camouflage magic to make it seem like that," she says, holding the mirror up to a seemingly innocent book. Haru panics. That mirror is a magical tool imbued with a dispelling technique used to negate spells. It's indispensable for the Black Hawk unit, which lacks magic users, but right now it's his worst nightmare. Haru tries to snatch the book back, claiming it's not suspicious, but Karen is too fast. She holds the mirror over the book, and the camouflage magic shatters like glass, revealing the true cover underneath. It's the erotic novel he was reading in the bookstore. Haru covers his face in shame, wondering why he, who usually discards books, kept this one. Karen opens the book and gasps. The contents are exactly what she expected, but worse. The characters are named Captain and Haru. Haru tries to explain that it's just a coincidence, a common mistake in writing, but Karen isn't listening. She accuses him of getting a kick out of this, of writing stories about them to satisfy his fantasies. He tells her he knows everything about her, about the cute noises she makes, and that he wants her to accept his feelings. As Haru lies on the floor, twitching, Karen shreds the book, vowing to burn it all. She screams that there's no way something like this would be allowed, her dignity in tatters. He resolves that next time, he'll write a brazen love story with them as the main characters, turning his defeat into creative fuel for his unyielding crush. He attempts to ask her something, his face flushed, but before he can get the words out, Karen dismissively tells him to ask next time if it's important, as she has somewhere to be. The rejection stings, especially since Haru had finally gathered the courage to do that, confess his feelings. Karen announces she's heading home early and instructs him to lock up, her demeanor strictly professional. Haru watches her leave, confused and hurt by her abruptness, wondering why she would ignore their sweet moment, just to rush off. As he steps out onto the balcony, he spots Karen walking away, arm in arm with a tall, dark-haired man in a suit. His heart shatters. Not only is she leaving with a man, but tomorrow is her day off. The pieces fall into place in his mind. A secret boyfriend, a romantic holiday. He tries to laugh it off, denying the reality before him, but the pain is evident as he decides to just go home. Unable to let it go, Haru follows them to a high-rise apartment building near the castle, Karen's residence. He hides behind a tree, feeling like a creep but desperate for answers. He reasons that no man seems to be entering with her, but the suspicion gnaws at him. Suddenly, a noise startles him. He freezes, pulling his scarf over his face like a bandit. A rustling sound comes from the garbage disposal area nearby. He peeks around the tree and sees something unexpected, a dog with two tails rummaging through the trash. Haru blinks, confused. He's never seen a two-tailed dog in this world before. He cautiously calls out to it, "Hee puppy." The creatures twitch. It turns around, revealing not one, but two heads. It's a Cerberus puppy. Haru steps out from behind the tree, his mind racing. He realizes the man she was with earlier wasn't a boyfriend at all, but likely a contact for illegal magical beasts. He connects the dots. The two-tailed dog, the secrecy, the man who looked suspicious. She hasn't seen Haru yet. She crouches down, calling out to Cerberus in a sweet, doting voice that Haru has never heard before. The puppies rush to her, barking happily as she feeds them. She giggles as they lick her face, scolding them affectionately for sneaking out while she was worried sick. The sight of the terrifying demon captain rolling around on the ground, cooing at puppies and calling them silly things, is so adorable it nearly kills Haru on the spot. He watches, mesmerized, until Karen suddenly notices him. She freezes, her smile vanishing instantly. "Ha! Haru," she whispers, her face draining of color. Haru steps out from behind the tree, his mind racing. He realizes the man she was with earlier wasn't a boyfriend at all, but likely a contact for illegal magical beasts. He connects the dots. The two-tailed dog, the secrecy, the man who looked suspicious. Karen is shaking, terrified that her secret is out. Haru, however, decides to play dumb to save her dignity. He pretends he didn't see anything incriminating, but Karen is already spiraling. She explains that she found the injured puppy during an expedition and couldn't leave it to die. She knows raising a chimera is illegal, but her maternal sense wouldn't let her abandon it. Haru listens, realizing she brought it home in secret and has been caring for it alone. He feels guilty for suspecting her of having a boyfriend when she was just being a compassionate, if slightly reckless, animal lover. The puppies look up at Karen with bubbly eyes, whining pitifully. Karen, with tears in her eyes, demands to know if Haru finds them pitiful too. Haru admits that while raising an animal isn't illegal in itself, a chimera is a different story. He suggests she ask Madeleine, the researcher, for help since she knows about magical creatures. Karen blushes, realizing she'll have to confess her lonely single woman raising a dog status to her friend, which she finds humiliating. Haru points out that hybrid chimeras often have unstable magical elements, so professional help is necessary. He asks her to keep his involvement a secret, not wanting to embarrass her further. Karen agrees, relief washing over her. Haru smiles, realizing his concern was uncalled for. She wasn't dating anyone, she was just being a softie. As they crouch together with the puppies, Haru thinks about how adorable it is that she took such a risk for these creatures. Suddenly, Karen's expression shifts. She smiles, a dark, mischievous glint in her eye. Haru flinches, caught red-handed. The atmosphere shifts from heartwarming to terrifying in a split second. Karen looms over him, twin shadows of the Cerberus heads mirroring her anger. Haru tries to laugh it off and leave, but Karen isn't letting him off the hook that easily. He realizes that despite their shared secret, the distance between them has reduced, mostly because she's now chasing him down the street. The next morning, Haru arrives at Karen's office, cheerfully reporting for work. Karen is sitting at her desk, looking exhausted and flushed. Haru notices immediately and asks if she's okay. She admits her body feels heavy but tries to stand up, only to stumble. Haru catches her, and the heat radiating from her body shocks him. She's burning up. Karen tries to push him away, insisting it's nothing, but Haru refuses to accept that. The venom causes fever, excess sweating, and vomiting, and there's no magical cure for it. Karen had defeated it, but not before getting splattered with its poison. Haru is furious. He demands to know why she went alone to a Jaflesia den. Karen, delirious and defensive, argues that it was an urgent mission and she couldn't count on anyone else. Haru snaps, telling her that her do-it-all-myself attitude is outdated and harmful to the team. He walks through the castle, ignoring the stares of other knights, determined to force her to rest. He tells her he's already discussed it with the unit, and they've split her work among them. Karen goes quiet, shocked that her subordinates stepped up without her asking. Haru asks if she feels more willing to rely on them now, smiling gently. He carries her all the way to her apartment and tucks her into bed. Haru sighs, disappointed that his perfect captain lives like a slob, but sets to work cleaning up. He notices the Cerberus puppies have a clean space, proving she cares more for them than herself. As he tidies, he finds a closet stuffed with plushies, revealing her hidden girly side. He blushes, realizing she's not just a stoic warrior. Karen is still feverish, sweating profusely in her sleep. Haru realizes she needs to be cooled down and her clothes changed. He prepares a basin of water and a towel. Blindfolding himself to preserve her dignity, he nervously begins to unbutton her shirt. His hands tremble as he wipes her skin, his imagination running wild despite the blindfold. Karen stirs, her eyes fluttering open. She sees Haru, blindfolded, hovering over her, and screams. Haru jumps back, ripping off the blindfold. Karen covers herself, face beat red, demanding to know what he's doing. Haru apologizes profusely, explaining he was just trying to help her cool down. She hides her face in the blanket, asking if he looked in her closet. Haru admits he did, and Karen practically combusts with embarrassment. Karen freezes, realizing she just outed herself. Karen panics, thinking he found her special underwear, but Haru innocently asks if she meant the plushies. Karen sees the realization on his face and screams at him to stop talking. Meanwhile, Haru is already busy with his next task, but his thoughts are still lingering on the image of Karen in her room, blushing and chasing him, a memory he decides to treasure despite the near-death experience. Karen thanks him for splitting the work, but her mind is elsewhere. Matt notices her distraction and wonders just who that newbie is. In the middle of a tense hallway confrontation, Mulberry, the self-proclaimed rival of Haru and member of the Elite Cross unit, stands accused of being the captain's escort. Haru looks at her with genuine confusion, wondering why she acts like a distant relative struggling to be remembered, which only fuels her frustration. Despite the awkwardness, Karen politely greets Mulberry, noting it's been a while, her tone formal and distant. Mulberry, ever the social butterfly, compliments Karen on her uniform, trying to bridge the gap between their units. Haru, oblivious to the subtle tension, notices a suspicious figure in a bunny suit having a secret conversation nearby. Just as he tries to point it out, a new face enters the scene. A cheerful voice calls out to Haru, and he turns to see a girl with a familiar ribbon. Before Haru can react, the girl, maybe, tackles him in a hug, pressing her chest against him with zero hesitation. She cheerfully offers to let him do whatever he wants with her boobs to cheer him up, claiming they are her only redeeming feature besides her liveliness. Haru, used to her antics, tries to push her away, while another girl in the background, presumably a friend, watches with amusement. Karen, however, is not amused. She stares at the display of affection with wide, horrified eyes, her face flushing as she stammers, completely unable to process the brazen offer. Haru introduces Maibi as a former classmate from the Knights Academy, trying to defuse the situation, but Maibi continues to cling to him, teasing him about his health. Karen, trying to maintain her composure, recalls that Maibi was assigned to a remote unit, making her presence here unexpected. Maibi, sensing Karen's discomfort but misinterpreting it, cheerfully tells Karen that she doesn't need to be so formal and can stop being a knight whenever she wants. Then, she drops a bombshell. She kisses Haru on the cheek, declaring that she'll take care of him if he's just Haru. The world seems to stop. Karen and Mulberry stand frozen, their eyes shadowed with a terrifying, demonic aura. Haru sweats nervously, realizing the atmosphere has shifted from awkward to lethal. Mulberry explodes first, accusing Maibi of being a slut for pressing her chest against Haru, her face contorted in jealousy. Karen, usually stoic, agrees with a shaky voice, demanding to know what is wrong with that woman. Haru, caught in the crossfire, tries to defend Maibi, claiming she's not that type of person. But his voice lacks conviction. Just as the situation threatens to devolve into violence, a man intervenes, pulling Maibi away and apologizing for her behavior. He explains that her communication skills are her strong suit but often cause trouble. He introduces himself as someone who helps her resolve these issues, bowing respectfully to Karen and Haru. Karen and Haru stare at him, stunned, realizing that Maibi has a handler of sorts. But before they can recover, another familiar face appears. A small, elegant girl with braided hair and a royal aura approaches them. Haru recognizes her immediately and calls out "Princess." In shock, the girl smiles sweetly, noting that Karen is here too. Haru explains to the readers and his confused companions that this is Princess Elruka, the king's only daughter and the current manager of the entire chivalric order. Despite looking like a child, she is the same age as Haru and Mulberry. Mulberry, realizing she just yelled in front of royalty, panics, asking why a newbie like Haru is so familiar with the princess. Haru explains that due to Elruka's weak constitution and social status, she was educated separately but wanted to attend school normally. At the school's request, Haru practiced skills and magic with her as a friend of the same age, leading to a close bond. Elruka blushes, admitting she's still not used to wearing armor, and that this is the first time they've met since Haru became a knight. Haru, with his usual charm, tells her it suits her perfectly because it's so cute. Elruka turns bright red, her hands flying to her cheeks as she processes the compliment. Her internal monologue goes into overdrive. Haru-sama praised me. He thinks I'm cute. He thinks I'm cute. Karen, watching this unfold, looks at the princess with a mix of shock and suspicion. Elruka suddenly remembers she has duties to attend to and excuses herself, but not before stumbling slightly. Haru, ever observant, notices her strange gait and asks if she's feeling tired. Elruka admits her shoulders and back have been sluggish. Haru, without hesitation, steps behind her and begins to massage her shoulders. He explains that magic circuits are like blood vessels, and Elruka's are thin, causing blockages. He claims he's just loosening her pool of magic with a special massage. To the onlookers, however, it looks incredibly lewd. Elruka moans, her face flushed with pleasure, begging him to stop but clearly enjoying it. Karen and Mulberry watch in horror, their faces burning. Haru, oblivious to the optics, complains that her circuits are already hard again despite a recent treatment. Other knights pass by, staring at the spectacle of a newbie massaging the princess against a wall while she makes questionable noises. Haru moves his hands lower, announcing he's moving to the hips. Elruka shudders, her eyes rolling back. Karen stares at Haru, her expression unreadable, while Elruka gazes at him with hearts in her eyes, thinking, he's so lovely. Elruka finally leaves for the meeting, and Karen tells Haru she'll see him later. Haru wipes sweat from his brow, commenting that it was tiring work. Karen, however, is silent, her eyes shadowed. Haru smiles at her, trying to lighten the mood, but Karen snaps. "How the fuck are you a loner?" she screams, grabbing him by the collar. She points out that he seems to know every beautiful, high-ranking woman in the kingdom, shattering her image of him as a fellow solitary soul. The quarterly conference proceeds without a hitch, but Karen's mood remains foul for days. The chapter ends with Karen glaring at nothing, feeling foolish for ever thinking they were kindred spirits. Haru returns to the office, utterly exhausted, only to find his captain, Karen, lost in thought at her desk, sighing over a marriage interview she's being pressured into. She's so absorbed in her worries, lamenting that she hasn't spoken to any men besides her subordinates in years, that she doesn't even notice Haru's presence. He can't help but tease her, noting that her ears are a newly discovered weak point, and remarking that on a battlefield, she'd never hesitate to just drag someone away by the scruff of their neck. The embarrassment is too much for Karen, who retaliates by grabbing his face, threatening to kill the pervert as she squeezes his cheeks until he babbles a muffled apology. Once she calms down, Haru points out how unusual it is for her to be so distracted, which sends her scrambling for a document she dropped during the scuffle. He watches as she picks it up, revealing the profile of a handsome, mustached man. Haru instantly realizes it's an arranged marriage proposal, his eyes widening as he sees the man's age, family structure, and work position laid out on the page. When he asks her what it is, Karen turns her back on him, coldly stating that he's just her subordinate, and it's none of his business. The dismissive words hit Haru like a physical blow, and he puffs his cheeks out in silent fury as she tells him to simply file his work report and go home. Unwilling to let it go, Haru marches straight to the one person who will tell him the truth. A woman named Madeline in a cluttered laboratory. Madeline confirms his worst fears, explaining that Karen is going to an arranged marriage interview, and the revelation hits Haru like a ton of bricks. Madeline is amused that he'd burst into her office over this, but Haru insists it's critically important to him. Seeing the genuine worry on his face, she makes a tempting offer. If he's that concerned, perhaps he'd like to take a peek. 1 week later, at a luxurious hotel, the plan is in motion. Karen, looking stunning but incredibly uncomfortable in a fancy dress, stammers through her introductions with the man from the photo. From a nearby rooftop, Haru and Madeline watch the disaster unfold, with Madeline chuckling that her friend has already reached her limit. Haru nervously questions the ethics of using paid vacation time to spy, but Madeline is far too entertained to care. When she teases him for being just as invested, Haru explodes, shouting that of course he's invested in Karen's marriage interview before Madeline quickly shushes him. Haru is confused why she's spying on a meeting she arranged, but Madeline clarifies that while she set it up using a magic listening device, she's not the true mastermind behind it, having acted on someone's request. Haru unleashes his ultimate puppy dog eyes technique, begging her to tell him who, but Madeline remains immune, finding him cute but refusing to break her vow of secrecy. Back at the restaurant, the date continues its downward spiral. The man praises Karen for being a knight while feigning humility, calling himself a mere servant in an insignificant company. The blatant lie infuriates Haru, who mutters that the man is a piece of shit, knowing full well from their intel that he's the number 2 of a massive corporation. His heart aches with jealousy seeing Karen all dolled up for this liar, believing she's beautiful enough without any of it. He hates himself for the ugly feelings bubbling up inside him. The lie is so absurd that both Haru and Madeline spit out their drinks in a fit of laughter, nearly giving away their position. Haru desperately tries to quiet her down, vividly recalling the last time Karen was on support, which involved her rampaging on the front lines with a morning star, screaming at everyone to get out of her way. Madeline wipes a tear from her eye, musing that Karen is just trying her best to act cute, a comment that sends Haru into a rage, demanding to know why she would ever try to act cute for a guy like that. Madeline reveals someone told Karen to behave like a proper lady, but cheekily keeps their identity a secret. The date becomes a series of clumsy mishaps, from Karen knocking over her glass, to sending a whole lobster flying across the table in her attempt to eat it. Through it all, the man remains calm and even seems charmed by her clumsiness, seeing her as modest and feminine, the exact opposite of the rugged knight he expected. His condescending thoughts are broadcast directly to the spies on the roof. He belittles the savage knights Karen works with and fantasizes about dyeing her into an elegant woman under his control. A demonic grin spreads across Haru's face as he hears this, wondering who's really about to get dyed. The man leans in close, asking Karen to meet again and promising to show her a more glamorous world. On the roof, Haru is in agony, silently screaming for her to say no. Just as she's about to respond, a thief with a knife bursts through the dining hall. Without a moment's hesitation, Karen's entire demeanor shifts. She stands and shouts for the thief to stop. The criminal scoffs, asking if she wants to get hurt, But Karen is no longer the clumsy, nervous woman from moments before. She coldly tells him not to be so conceited. When the thief charges, intending to rip her dress, she meets him with a devastatingly powerful high kick to the face, knocking him out cold as the other patrons erupt in cheers. Her date stares in wide-eyed shock. Karen turns to him, her polite facade shattered, and formally declines his offer. She declares that she is a frontline knight, and she is not willing to abandon her true nature for anyone. With that, she walks away, leaving him frozen in place. As the scene settles, Madeline turns to Haru with a serious expression, asking him just how committed he is to Karen. She lays out the harsh reality. He's only 16 with his life ahead of him, while Karen is nearly 30 and running out of time. She warns him that he can't play half-assed love games with her. But she continues, if he is truly resolved to devote his entire youth to her, then she will become his ally and support him all the way. Her final words are a stark warning. If he continues to dawdle the next time an offer comes, Karen might not say no. The weight of her words settles on Haru, leaving him with two burning questions. Who was the true mastermind behind this interview? And what would Karen's answer have been if the thief hadn't appeared? Late one night at a bar exclusively for knights, the squad throws a long overdue welcome party for Haru, the last of the year's new recruits still standing. Just as the celebration gets underway, Karen makes a fateful announcement. The Imperial Knights Regiment is covering the entire tab for the night. Amidst the chaos, Karen has to intercept a senior knight trying to hand Haru a drink, reminding everyone that he's underage and will be sticking to grape juice. While his comrades descend into a drunken rampage, Karen apologizes to Haru, the supposed guest of honor, for being forgotten in the excitement. Haru, ever easygoing, simply smiles and says he enjoys watching everyone have fun, which prompts Karen to order a mountain of food, instructing him to eat his fill to make up for not drinking. As the night wears on, the initial storm of celebration quiets down, leaving Haru sipping his drink in contemplative silence. A slightly tipsy Karen notices his distant expression and asks him what he's spacing out for. Lost in the sight of her, his heart pounding in his chest, Haru suddenly breaks the quiet atmosphere with a direct and shocking question. He asks why she turned down his confession. The query slices through the tavern's boisterous energy, causing several knights to choke on their drinks as the air goes still. Karen is utterly floored, sputtering and asking why he would bring that up all of a sudden. The awkward moment is briefly interrupted by the bar's imposing, bunny-eared keeper shutting down a drunken knight's impromptu strip show. Unfazed, Haru explains that he just blurted out what he's been wanting to say, driven by a nagging curiosity about whether her recent marriage interview had changed her feelings. He presses her for an answer, but Karen, blushing furiously, to feign ignorance, claiming she doesn't remember any such confession. Haru instantly sees through the lie and shouts that she definitely remembers, his composure finally cracking as tears well up in his eyes. He cries out, asking if he's not worthy to stand by her side because he's tiny, weaker, and 13 years younger than her. His raw, emotional outburst leaves Karen speechless. However, she quickly notices that he's slurring his words and seems unwell. Haru denies it, insisting he's only been drinking grape juice, though he dazedly comments on its surprisingly dry and adult flavor. Realization dawns on Karen as she snatches his mug, chugs the contents, and furiously yells at the shopkeeper for serving wine to a minor. The truth hits Haru a second too late, and he promptly throws up everywhere, ending the night in a spectacular mess. Haru awakens with a groan, sitting up in a strange bed to find two small, fluffy, Cerberus-like puppies pouncing on him. He hears Karen's voice telling him he's finally awake and sees her sitting calmly across the room in casual clothes. She explains that it was quite a chore to carry his drunken, armored self all the way to her house. Handing him a glass of water, she confirms that the bar staff mistook wine for juice. Haru sheepishly admits the wine tasted good, earning a worried sigh from Karen about his future. He then spots his armor, now gleaming on her desk, and she explains that she cleaned it after he threw up all over it. The embarrassing memory makes his head throb with a hangover. Karen gently pushes him back onto the bed, telling him to rest, and he can't help but notice how unusually nice she's being. She scoffs, asking if she isn't always nice to him, reminding him how she always checks his work and trains him, even if her methods are questionable. Leaning in with a mischievous glint in her eye, She teases him, asking if perhaps she should try harder not to be so nice. Haru feels a familiar blush creep up his neck, realizing she's developed a cheeky habit of teasing him, and he's powerless to counter it because he finds her too cute. It's then that he looks down and has a startling realization. He's only in his underwear. He asks if she was the one who undressed him, and when she confirms it, his mind goes into overdrive, imagining the worst as he clutches the sheets and calls her an animal. He visualizes a wild scenario where she took advantage of him, only for her to bluntly state that she only removed his pants because he'd puked on them. With a grin, Haru admits he was just messing with her, knowing full well she'd never do such a thing, though he quietly wishes she would. The tables have turned, and now it's Karen who is flustered. Haru presses his advantage, calling her a late bloomer who is heroic on the battlefield, but a coward in love. She defensively retorts that she could be bold if the circumstances were right. Smirking, Haru lays down the ultimate challenge, asking if she would kiss him, right here and now. Karen panics, declaring it shameless for an unofficial couple to do such a thing, but Haru points out the perfect circumstances: a man and a woman, alone in a room late at night. He taunts her, asking if the demonic night captain is afraid. Overwhelmed, Karen can only deny it as Haru offers to cooperate and help her gain experience. Feeling he's won the exchange, Haru prepares to let her off the hook, but Madeleine's warning about him dawdling flashes in his mind. He clenches his fist, knowing he has to be more aggressive, but then catches himself, deciding a kiss born of impatience would be wrong. Apologizing for his rudeness, he lies back down to sleep it off. As he drifts off, Karen mutters about him being a precocious brat, but then the two puppies suddenly nudge her towards the bed. Haru's eyes flutter open, and he finds Karen leaning directly over him, but before he can process what's happening, she closes the distance and kisses him. Karen-san, the 29-year-old captain of the 4th Imperial Knights Regiment, has dedicated her entire life to protecting the peace of the royal capital, leaving her with absolutely zero experience when it comes to men. So when she impulsively kissed her subordinate, Haru, it was very likely the first time for them both. The aftermath is pure, unadulterated awkwardness. Haru is stunned into silence, managing only to stammer her name, while Karen is frozen in shock, her face a canvas of disbelief. She finally breaks, tears streaming down her face as she tries to explain that her pet Cerberus ran into her backside, causing her to fall. In her mortified panic, she declares she has to go do her morning sword practice and flees the room, telling him to go home when he feels better. She bolts out the door before Haru can even tell her it's still the middle of the night. The next morning, a gloom hangs over the knight's headquarters. A new notice on the bulletin board announces an interregimental training exercise, a program where new recruits are temporarily reassigned to other units. For Haru, this means leaving the Black Hawks and Karen's side for a while. As he stands there, dejected, he's approached by a fellow knight with pigtails who complains that his listless face is dragging down her spirits. Haru, lost in his thoughts, fumbles with her name, calling her everything from hexagon to icosagon, which only infuriates her more until she screams that her name is Mulberry. She sighs dramatically, lamenting his lack of interest in her, a recurring bit from their academy days when her persistent meddling annoyed him to no end. Now, however, Haru sees her differently. He apologizes, explaining that he genuinely has trouble recalling things on the spot, and assures her it's not a lack of interest. He tells her that he's come to see what a kind and wonderful person she is and wants to get to know her better, a heartfelt compliment that leaves Mulberry blushing and speechless. Haru's daze is so profound that he's forgotten why they were even talking, and Mulberry has to angrily remind him it was about his new assignment. She notices his despair over leaving Karen's side and reveals that she has been assigned to his unit, the Black Hawks, while he is being sent to the first unit, the White Cross. She offers some parting words, teasing him about being a topper boy and warning him that giving up won't be permitted under her new, notoriously severe captain. Later, Haru reports to Karen's office to inform her of his new assignment. The air between them is thick with the memory of the kiss, both of them blushing and struggling to make eye contact. Karen awkwardly tells him to work hard so he doesn't tarnish their unit's reputation, and the whole exchange is painfully stilted. Haru leaves her office thinking that perhaps a little distance is exactly what they need to fix this awkwardness. Before he goes, Karen hands him a gift bag, instructing him to give it to the White Cross's commander as a sign of respect. Curious, Haru asks what kind of person this commander is, a question that makes Karen blush and hesitate before answering. Upon arriving at the 1st Regiment's office, he's greeted by 2 vice captains, Sakumika, who manages the healers, and Mayura, who handles the sword fighters. They welcome him warmly, and when Haru asks about their captain, Sakumika cheekily recalls the harsh yet sweet training they received from Karen, her memory drifting into a rather suggestive fantasy that Mayura has to physically shut down. Both women remember Karen fondly from their academy days, where she was a respected senior who guided the underclassmen, and they both clearly had a crush on her, a fact that makes Haru realize he has more rivals than he thought. They lead him to the commander's room, where he comes face to face with a massive, imposing man in heavy armor named Gallus, who reveals himself to be none other than Karen's father. Gallus explains that the White Cross is an elite unit, the largest in the chivalric orders, tasked with surveying dangerous, unexplored dungeons and fighting powerful monsters in large groups, a world away from Haru's all-purpose handyman duties in the small-scale Blackhawk unit. A week into the exercise, Gallus praises Haru's performance, mentioning that Karen had spoken highly of him, her voice unusually happy and talkative as she described the new recruit with a backbone. The news that Karen has been singing his praises makes Haru's heart flutter, but Gallus isn't finished. He tells Haru that he has yet to see his serious side and intends to see it today, referencing Haru's incredible performance when Karen was poisoned and his substitute actions against a powerful dragon. Gallus reveals he knows everything, even things not in the official reports, and addresses Haru by his old academy moniker. Total Aptitude Haru, the greatest monster since the founding of the school. His expectations are now crystal clear, leaving Haru with a grim understanding of what's to come. Haru reluctantly agrees to Gallus's demand, though he internally complains about being forced to get serious. The unit stands ready as a massive winged beast emerges from the forest, a black dragon. Though small for its kind, it is clearly a superior species, far more dangerous than the lower-level dragon the initial reports indicated. Panic sets in among the vice captains, who argue that fighting it with their current numbers is impossible and they should retreat. But Gallus shuts them down, explaining that the creature relentlessly chases anything that flees and is faster than a horse. Turning their backs now would be suicide. With a sly grin, he turns to Haru, pointing out that this dire situation is the perfect opportunity for him to finally get serious. The implication infuriates Haru, who accuses Gallus of intentionally leading them into this trap and risking his subordinates' lives just to test him. Gallus coolly retorts that it's a commander's duty to allocate personnel efficiently, and with Haru's true power, no opponent is unbeatable. With no other choice, Haru's demeanor shifts. A dark, intense aura envelops him as he prepares for battle, lamenting that every time he gets serious, he feels like he's becoming another person. Gallus roars for the others to follow Haru's lead, and the boy leaps into action, meeting the dragon head-on in a spectacular clash. Later that night, back at the command center, Gallus explains Haru's hidden history to the stunned vice captains. He reveals Haru's nickname from the academy, Total Aptitude, earned by achieving perfect scores in every aptitude exam: magic, healing, and swordplay. Mayura finds this impossible to believe, as people can typically only specialize in one attribute. Gallus confirms that while effort can compensate for low aptitude to some extent, Haru is a rare exception, a genius whose records are classified information. After the grueling battle, a completely drained Haru collapses onto his bed, exhausted from using his full power, but motivated by the thought of Karen being by his side. His brief moment of peace is interrupted by a knock at the door. It's Mulberry, who has bad news. She leads him to Karen's office, where they find her sitting at her desk with a soulless, broken expression, muttering about butterflies. Mulberry explains that Karen has been this way since Haru left. At first, she was her usual dignified self, but slowly her spirit began to crumble. She started making clumsy mistakes, calling Mulberry by the wrong name with increasing frequency, and growing more demotivated each day. After a week, she became a hollow shell of her former self, collapsing into her chair the moment she returned to her office. Mulberry asserts that the cause is obvious. Karen can't function without him. Leaving Haru to handle the situation, Mulberry departs with a knowing smile, telling them to cheer each other up. Haru tries to snap Karen out of her trance, but she's completely unresponsive. Finally, in a desperate attempt to shock her back to her senses, he leans in and whispers a marriage proposal in her ear. The words act like a lightning bolt, jolting Karen back to reality with a blush. She demands to know why he's there and what he just said, having woken up because she heard something weird. Flustered, she dismisses it as a dream, but Haru knows he's been caught. As he leaves, a quiet determination settles over him. He vows that next time, he'll ask her properly. Elsewhere, the city streets are littered with the bodies of defeated knights, victims of a mysterious woman with an eye patch who revels in the chaos she has caused. She is the leader of the Red Hound, a human crime specializing unit, and she has a particular interest in turning her enemies' subordinates against them through a terrifying, hallucinatory power. After making short work of a group of bandits, she uses her ability on their knight captors, forcing them to slaughter each other in a frenzy of confusion and madness, leaving her to vanish into the night as the lone survivor tries to comprehend the massacre. A week after Haru's intervention, Princess Elruka, the supreme commander of the Imperial Knights, addresses the order. She announces that a roaming band of bandits has finally had their hideout located, a ruined fort on the kingdom's southern border. The situation is dire enough that she is mobilizing the White Cross, the strongest of the chivalric orders, an unusual move against mere bandits. Princess Elruka explains that the group includes exites, exiled knights using their powers for criminal activity. Commander Gals adds that their leader is a woman who single-handedly defeated more than 10 men from the Red Hound unit a week prior. Fortunately, most of the defeated knights survived, thanks to the healing magic woven into their uniforms and the timely arrival of healers. Mayura scoffs at the pathetic display from the notoriously weak Red Hound, but notes that their entire squad was taken out simultaneously by magic, indicating their leader is no ordinary magician. Gals declares they must eradicate the bandits swiftly before news of the Red Hound's failure damages the country's prestige. Princess Elruka's involvement is a political move by the king to both cover up the blunder and display the kingdom's military might. The young princess confides in Haru, admitting her nervousness about commanding her first major military operation and asking him to stay by her side. Haru readily agrees, promising to do anything she asks, a statement that sends the princess into a flustered, hard-eyed daze as she starts fantasizing about their wedding ceremony. The other knights look on in confusion before Gales clears his throat, bringing the princess back to reality. With a rallying cry for the country, the people, and their pride, Princess Elruka gives the order to head out, marking the start of Haru's first anti-personnel battle with the White Cross. Upon arriving at the eerily quiet fort, Haru is greeted by a bunny-eared reconnaissance specialist named Maybe. Maybe playfully teases Haru about their past hot encounters, a comment that earns a swift rebuke from the princess, who jokingly threatens to use her authority to prevent any future marriage between them. Getting down to business, Maybe reports that dozens of bandits are lurking inside the fort. The hideout is protected by a powerful magic barrier that can detect intruders and is littered with high-grade explosive traps. Sakumika realizes with a shock that the entire defense system was likely created by a single, incredibly skilled magician, the bandit leader herself. The sorcerer unit confirms they can disable the defenses, but it would take a lot of time and magical power, leaving them weakened for the main battle. Waiting for the traps to run out of magic is not an option, as they are designed to last for months unless the caster is killed or knocked unconscious. As the commanders debate their next move, Haru steps forward with an idea. He volunteers to go in and take care of it by himself. Inside the fort, the bandits are relaxing, unaware of the approaching knights, though their leader, Anego, has a feeling they've been surrounded. One of her men asks if she would die for him, and she coolly asks if he would die for her, a question he readily agrees to, showcasing their bizarre loyalty. Suddenly, a bandit on watch duty is silently taken down from above by Haru, who has used magic to infiltrate the fort from the ceiling. The lookout's scream alerts the others, and the intruder is quickly discovered. Haru, disguised with transformation magic to look like one of the bandits, uses the confusion to his advantage. He finishes off the man he knocked out and reports to the others that the rat got away, earning a curse for his supposed incompetence. Anego, annoyed by the commotion, orders one of her men to look after her while the others deal with the intruder. Haru, still in disguise, volunteers for the job, his heart pounding as he realizes he must maintain his cover. He tries to reassure himself that since Madeline saw through his magic before, his skills must have improved, allowing him to now alter even his physique and body odor. He enters Inego's room, only to find her waiting for him, having used more magic than expected to get there. Outside the fort, Princess Elruka worries for Haru's safety, but the others are more concerned about the nerve-wracking prospect of having to monitor dozens of subordinates at once. Maibi, however, has full confidence in Haru's ability to succeed where others might fail. Inside, Haru, still in his bandit disguise, launches a surprise attack with a spear, aiming for Inego's heart as she lies vulnerable on her bed. But his attack stops dead in its tracks, his body frozen by a magic trap circle that suddenly appears beneath his feet. Inego sits up, revealing it was all a ploy. She had sensed his presence and set a trap of her own, unleashing a powerful fireball that sends him flying across the room. Meanwhile, Karen and Mulberry are clearing monsters in a nearby forest when Karen pauses, a worried look on her face. Mulberry correctly guesses that she's thinking about Haru's dangerous mission. Karen tries to deny it, but her frantic blushing gives her away, much to Mulberry's amusement. Back in the fort's basement, Haru wakes up stripped and bound to a strange contraption. The bandit leader, Inego, mocks his disguise, admitting it was nearly perfect but was given away by subtle details in his movement and speech, things her perceptive right eye could not be deceived by. She is amazed that he survived her attack magic, which was meant to kill him, and is already recovering. One of her subordinates boasts that they will harvest Haru's organs and sell them, but Inego silences him with a flick of her finger, causing him to foam at the mouth and collapse as she asserts that she alone decides Haru's fate. Now alone with him, she removes her eye patch and introduces herself as Henri, her gaze immediately beginning to warp his vision. She explains that her eye possesses an unnatural magic, once called an evil eye, and he is becoming unable to resist its power. As his consciousness fades, Haru manages to utter his name and his affiliation with the White Cross. Henri is intrigued, having noticed that a section of her barrier had been weakened by countless sword-like cuts. She asks how he did it, and he explains his purification sword technique, a form of magic-canceling swordcraft. He reveals that he perfected this technique by studying countless grimoires and relentlessly training to dispel his own magic, condensing power into his sword to slice through magical formulas at high speed. This technique was only recently perfected using a custom-made sword crafted from magic iron by the kingdom's finest artisans, a gift from Princess Elruka herself. The princess had presented it to him as a reward for his efforts, recognizing him as a linchpin of the chivalric orders, and asking only that he keep giving it his best. Henri is captivated by his story, admitting he turns her on and declaring that he will stop being a knight and serve her instead. As he struggles against her intoxicating magic, his mind flashes with an image of Karen, smiling warmly. Fueled by this memory, Haru finds the strength to resist, declaring that his heart already belongs to someone else and roaring for Henri to stop touching him. The force of his willpower shatters her hypnosis, causing her evil eye to bleed as she stares in amazement. Just as she's reeling from the shock, her magic barrier detects something approaching at high speed. Suddenly, the wall explodes inwards as a figure crashes through. Through the dust and debris, Haru sees a battle-worn Karen standing tall, her eyes blazing with fury. Henri is stunned that someone could break through her traps and barrier, but her surprise quickly turns to excitement as she recognizes Karen's impressive swordsmanship. She trembles with delight, admiring the wound Karen gave her, and musing on how the boy she weakened managed to resist her power. Just as the two women are about to clash, the rest of the White Cross, led by Gallies, smashes through the weakened barrier and storms the fort. Outside, it's been an hour since Haru's infiltration, and the knights have changed their strategy. Maibi and the local knights create a diversion, demanding the bandits surrender, while the magician unit sneaks towards the fort under stealth magic. Gals grows impatient, knowing that Haru's capture means the bandits are aware of their presence. Inside, 2 hours after Haru was captured, Henri's hypnosis is shattered. Outside, the magician unit detects a sudden, dramatic weakening in the barrier's magic. Gallus realizes this means the caster is still alive, but has been rendered unconscious. or had their concentration broken. Seizing the opportunity, a lone rider gallops towards the fort. It's Karen, who has charged ahead of the main force. She dismounts with grim determination, ordering Saku Mika to take care of her horse before leaping into the fray. Back in the ruined basement, Henri decides to retreat, promising Haru they'll meet again. Henri tries to use her evil eye on Karen, but Karen simply declares that she will not be restrained by anyone. Henri then activates a phase warp, a rare and advanced magic, and vanishes from the room. With the threat gone, Karen sheathes her sword, turning her attention to a very embarrassed and very naked Haru. He asks why she's there, and without a word, she walks over and pulls him into a tight embrace. Haru awakens to the sight of his captain, Karen, her face etched with a desperate mix of relief and fury. She calls him a dumbass, her voice trembling as she admits how worried she was, confessing she wouldn't know what to do if anything had happened to him. Tears stream down her face, and when Haru asks if she's crying, she vehemently denies it, claiming she's just shaking from the damage she took getting to him. A wave of guilt washes over Haru. He apologizes, remembering the vow he made in his heart that he would never be the cause of her sadness. But as Karen holds him, a sudden, unfamiliar heat begins to spread through his body. He realizes with dawning horror that the effects of the aphrodisiac rubbed all over him earlier are finally kicking in, a violent, intense lust boiling up from within him. He wonders how he even managed to suppress it until now, especially with his beloved's body pressed so tightly against his own. Knowing he's on the verge of losing control, he desperately tells her to let go, warning that at this rate, he'll end up attacking her. His sudden movement causes Karen to flinch, but instead of a cry of pain, a soft, breathy moan escapes her lips, her body reacting with a jolt of pleasure. Haru stares in shock, a new realization dawning on him. The aphrodisiac, potent and fast-acting, must have transferred to her through their contact. Karen's cheeks are flushed, her eyes hazy with a desire she doesn't understand as she whispers Haru's name, complaining that her body feels incredibly hot. She leans in close, her face a mask of longing, and Haru feels his own control slipping away. Yet, even in his haze, a single pierces through the lust. Making her his through the power of a drug would be utterly pointless. Just as their lips are about to meet, the sound of a door being kicked open shatters the moment. The commander bursts in, shouting for Karen and Haru, demanding to know if they're hurt. The interruption snaps Karen back to reality, and mortification instantly replaces desire. With a furious roar, she grabs Haru in a crushing bear hug, declaring it his punishment for being captured so easily by the enemy. The commander can only watch in confusion, trying to reason that the opponent was tough, as Karen runs off, dragging a squealing Haru behind her, and yelling for the commander to leave her alone. Meanwhile, outside the ruined structure, the battle has concluded. One of the remaining bandits panics, wondering how their leader Inego's barrier was disabled, and if she's safe. His brutish companion scoffs, refusing to check and questioning why they have to fight the kingdom's knights, just because Inego ordered them to. The loyalist screams that giving their lives to protect Inego is their duty, but their argument is cut short by the swift and brutal efficiency of the White Cross Knights. These elite warriors, led by a dark-skinned woman, systematically neutralize the bandits, taking care not to kill them to preserve the princess's public image. A young knight marvels at the strength of the White Cross, witnessing their prowess firsthand. Watching the one-sided slaughter from a safe distance is a mysterious woman with a black eye patch. She remarks with disappointment how easily the bandits, who were supposed to fight to the death, were captured. She muses that this is the vast difference between wannabe thugs and the kingdom's strongest warriors, admitting she had underestimated the knights. Not far away, the bandit leader, Inego, has already made her escape, lamenting that her charm magic has weakened, leaving only a few of her most corrupted followers behind. She stares off into the distance, a twisted smile on her face as she thinks of Haru, whispering how much she desires to make him her personal puppet. Soon after, journalists from the kingdom's newspaper arrive on the scene, praising the knights for their overwhelming victory in capturing the bandits with 0 casualties. The princess, with a polite smile, informs them that while their leader escaped, the kingdom is safe thanks to the imperial knights, as her team happily poses for a picture. The captured bandits are rounded up, some still defiant and taunting the knights, claiming their victory is hollow since Inego got away. As the knights enter the dungeon, they marvel at the massive hole Karen punched in the wall, remarking that a solid wall is like pudding to her, with rumors of her superhuman strength being comparable to that of a gorilla. Later, sitting on a log in the quiet woods, Karen tries to dismiss the earlier incident, telling Haru to forget what happened because she wasn't in her right mind due to the aphrodisiac. Haru, however, quietly tells her that he won't be forgetting what happened for his entire life. Karen asks if his body is all right, and he confirms it is, thanks to Sakumika's healing magic. A brief flashback reveals the healer Sakumika tending to a completely flattened Haru, noting with horror that on top of being hit with binding magic, it seemed almost every bone in his body had been crushed by some extreme pressure. Karen, who inflicted the damage with her punishment, blushes and looks away. She admits that even after using her dispelling mirror, her body still feels weird and hot from the lingering effects of the aphrodisiac, a sentiment Haru shares. She anxiously wonders what the princess wants to talk to her about, certain she's about to be scolded. This prompts Haru to ask how she knew he was in trouble in the first place. Blushing, Karen explains that she heard from Madeline. The scene flashes back to Karen on a mission with her subordinate, Mulberry, trying and failing to hide her worry for Haru. Suddenly, a mechanical bird, a messenger marked Cita, descends with a note. Karen opens it to find a frantic message from Madeline, claiming Haru was hit by a high-power magic attack and that his life was in grave danger, demanding her immediate assistance. Without a moment's hesitation, Karen had abandoned her mission, telling Mulberry to stand by until she returned before blasting off into the sky. Back in the present, Karen fumes, muttering about how that fucking Madeline exaggerated the situation. She complains that instead of finding him at death's door, he was perfectly fine, flirting naked with some girl, a claim Haru quickly denies. Hearing the story, Haru is deeply moved, finally understanding the sheer panic that must have driven her. He remembers how she arrived, riddled with wounds from rushing to his side, and how she shed tears for his sake. At that moment, he feels his love for her swell to an even greater size, a torrent of emotion that he thought couldn't possibly grow any stronger. He knows, with absolute certainty, that he loves Karen-san more than anyone in the world and would gladly die for her. Karen notices his intense stare and asks him why he's looking at her like that, flustered. Haru smiles warmly, telling her he's just incredibly thankful for what she did. This sends Karen into a rapid-fire, defensive tirade, insisting she only saved him because he's a useful subordinate from a team standpoint, and not because she harbors any special feelings for him whatsoever. But Haru cuts through her frantic denial with two simple words. He leans in, his expression earnest and confident, and states that she did it because he's captain's, because he's her Haru. His words strike her like lightning, triggering a vivid memory of herself screaming, "What the fuck are you doing to MI Haru?" at the enemy vixen. Completely flustered and cornered, Karen tries to backtrack, stammering that she meant he was merely one of her many subordinates. Just then, the princess and her retinue arrive, thanking Haru for waiting. As the group reunites, Haru looks at the blushing, flustered Karen and smiles to himself, thinking that slowly but surely, the distance between them is finally beginning to shrink. The princess stops Karen from returning to her mission, refusing to let her go back while she's still injured. Karen protests that she has duties to attend to, and the healers can handle her wounds, but the princess firmly explains that a skilled magician's attack leaves lasting internal damage that can't be so easily fixed. Watching them, Haru notes the informal way the princess speaks to his captain, a clear sign of their deep bond. With her decision made, the princess announces that both Karen and Haru are coming with her group to a nearby hot springs inn to recuperate. In the women's bath, the knights are surprised to see their royal leader in such a common setting, but the princess waves off their concerns, happy for a chance to escape the stuffy castle. Meanwhile, in the men's bath, Haru is lost in thought, convinced that the vibes between him and Karen are good but plagued by insecurity. He agonizes over their 13-year age difference, terrified that his feelings are just a one-sided misunderstanding and that he's being conceited. He recalls her worried and flustered expressions, but the fear that she only cares for him as a subordinate and would show those faces to anyone sends him spiraling. The sheer terror of being rejected overwhelms him, and he clutches his head in silent anguish, feeling like he wouldn't be able to live anymore. He tries to snap out of it, telling himself that with a dangerous magician like Inigo still at large, this is no time for frivolous thoughts about romance. Yet, the instant he tries to banish the idea, His mind immediately conjures a sweet fantasy of dating her, causing him to break into a giddy, lovesick giggle that leaves his comrades utterly bewildered. Back in the women's bath, the princess confesses to Maybe that she feels completely useless, like a mere decoration who only fretted while everyone else fought bravely. But Maybe reassures her, telling the crying princess that everyone still loves her deeply. She explains that the knights fought with all their might precisely because she was there, inspired by her constant concern for the kingdom and its people. This ability to move hearts, Maybe insists, is a magnificent power all its own. Touched by her words, the princess's spirits lift, and she agrees with Maybe's proposal that they should get stronger together, a new bond of friendship and rivalry forged between them. Karen watches them with a small smile, thinking that the princess is growing closer to her people, though her thoughts are soured when Maybe declares that despite their new friendship, she won't be giving up on Haru. The declaration sends a bolt of pure, unadulterated jealousy through Karen. A short distance away, a more chaotic scene unfolds as Sakumika is caught getting a bit too hands-on while washing another knight, only for a stone-faced Karen to walk in on them. She presses further, pointing out that Karen took the shortest possible route directly to the dungeon, moving as if she already knew he was there. Flustered, Karen admits that she doesn't really know how she knew. She just had a powerful feeling, an undeniable intuition that he was there. The conversation then turns to their escaped foe, Anego. Hearing the vixen's name, Karen's expression becomes a mask of cold fury as she remembers Haru being hurt, and she vows to make the magician pay for harming something so precious to her. She then immediately backpedals, frantically clarifying that by precious thing, she meant her expensive clothes, which were ruined in the fight, a clumsy excuse that leaves her companions staring in disbelief. As they finally leave the inn, Karen gets a nagging feeling she's forgotten something important, only to remember with dawning horror that she abandoned her subordinate, Mulberry, who is still waiting tearfully for her captain to return. The next morning, Haru is enjoying a rare day off when a knock sounds at his door. He opens it to find Karen standing there, not in her armor, but in beautiful casual clothes, her cheeks flushed as she looks at him, leaving Haru utterly speechless at the unexpected sight. Haru stands completely stunned, barely recognizing the woman before him as his captain. Karen, flustered and blushing in her casual clothes, explains that she was also forced to take a day off. Haru wonders why she's using one of her precious 3 annual holidays to show up at his house, a question that sends Karen into a flustered rage. When Haru tries to retreat back inside, the door slams shut in his face and the knob refuses to turn, trapping him outside. On the other side of the door, Karen calmly reads from a notepad, seemingly having anticipated his every move. After a moment, she throws the door open and boldly declares that as a city-bred Wani-san, she will teach a country bumpkin like him how to properly enjoy a day off in the imperial capital. But blushing furiously, Haru hesitantly asks if he can interpret her offer as an invitation for a date. The directness of his question causes Karen to short-circuit, her face turning crimson as she hides behind her notepad, stammering that he just might be able to see it that way. Haru immediately realizes what's happening. The ever-prepared Madeline must have set this whole thing up, providing Karen with notes for their date. Feeling cornered, Karen's confidence falters, and she asks with a hint of sadness if he doesn't want to go out with a middle-aged lady like her. Without a second of hesitation, Haru tells her he'll get ready right away, his heart pounding at the thought of a date with the woman he loves. As they walk through the bustling city streets, Karen, still unaccustomed to the crowds, tells him not to stray too far so she won't have to worry about him. She reaches for his hand, but Haru, seeing her intention, interlaces their fingers instead. Karen yelps, demanding to know what he's doing with such an indecent way of holding hands. Haru calmly replies that this is just how lovers normally hold hands, a comment that makes her even more flustered as she insists they hold hands normally. He can't help but smile at her reaction, feeling the warmth of her hand in his, and knowing that to any onlooker, they look exactly like a couple. Later, at a fancy cafe, Karen proudly informs a waiter that she has a reservation, trying to act like a regular even as the staffer notes her obvious inexperience. Haru can only smile, concluding that this perfect date spot was, as expected, all Madeline's doing. During their meal, Karen reveals that the magical sword that the princess gave him was actually created by Madeline, who is not just a maid but the kingdom's foremost magic researcher. Upon learning that Haru was the recipient of her creation, Madeline, in a fit of worry, hastily added a function to the sword that would sense when its owner was in mortal danger and notify her directly. Karen explains that the life in danger alert that sent her rushing to his side was likely just a false alarm triggered when he was knocked away from his sword. She then tells him with a gentle smile that Madeline worries about him a lot, and he should be sure to thank her properly. Haru is touched by the lengths his friends have gone to for him. When dessert arrives, he takes a bite of the magical ice cream and is overwhelmed by how delicious it is. Seeing his childlike joy, Karen offers him a bite of her own dessert. The simple act of her wanting to feed him sends a jolt through Haru's entire body. He recognizes it as the classic hand feeding gesture between lovers and notices that while she's trying to act calm, her ears are dyed a bright, telltale red. Just as he leans in to accept, Karen smirks mischievously and adds a condition. If he eats this bite, he must do whatever she says for the rest of his life, no matter what it is. But before she can even finish her sentence, Haru leans forward and takes the bite, quickly licking the remaining ice cream off her finger. He looks at her with a gentle, unwavering smile and promises to listen to whatever she orders, whether it's for work or in their private lives. Karen is left completely speechless and flustered, stammering that she was only joking. But Haru simply gazes at her, and she quietly asks if he'll really listen to whatever she says. He confirms it without hesitation, and a wave of emotion washes over her. In a flustered panic, she shoves the rest of her dessert at him, declaring she's full, and he has to eat the rest. But her blush betrays her true feelings as she reminds him not to forget their new promise. They spend the rest of the day exploring the city, looking at shops and watching street performers, hand in hand the entire time. Later, resting on a park bench, they agree that while the day was tiring, it was also a lot of fun. Their peaceful moment is interrupted by the sound of a little girl crying, lost and alone. When Karen approaches, the girl innocently calls her auntie, a word that deals critical emotional damage to the 29-year-old knight. Haru steps in, gently asking the girl, whose name is Rika, if she's strong. She tearfully asks what her big brother's name is, and Haru introduces himself, offering to help find her sister. Rika's eyes sparkle, and she hugs him tightly, declaring that her Oni-chan is so cool. Seeing this, Karen seethes with a comical, shark-toothed jealousy, despite Haru's reminders that Rika is just a small child. Deciding on a more direct approach, Karen covers the child's ears, takes a deep breath, and unleashes a roar of superhuman volume, announcing to the entire city that they have a lost girl named Rika in their care. The sound, described by bystanders as a dragon's roar, quickly brings Rika's older sister running. The older sister, a Knight Academy student named Reka, scolds her sibling for getting lost before profusely thanking Karen and Haru. When Karen introduces herself as a knight, Reka is starstruck and apologizes for interrupting their date. Haru smoothly confirms that they are indeed on a date, much to Karen's blushing embarrassment. As they walk home at the end of the day, Haru expresses how much fun he had, happy that they'll see each other at work and the next day. Karen agrees, a soft, genuine smile gracing her lips as she thinks to herself that she never expected to feel this way too. Haru looks at her, his heart full, but decides not to confess just yet, not wanting to overwhelm her when she's tired. He chastises himself for being a coward, but a darker thought surfaces. Even if they became lovers, he knows they would have to separate soon anyway, a grim realization that would be confirmed just a few days later. The Imperial Knights Divisional Officers convene a meeting to discuss their escaped foe, Henri. They have almost no information on her background, forcing them to rely on the testimonies of the captured bandits to piece together her abilities. It's revealed that Henri is a versatile and powerful mage, capable of using attack, barrier, trap, and even phase warp magic. However, her most dangerous weapon is her evil eye, a mind control magic that becomes active when she opens her left eye, capable of inducing hallucinations and charming her targets. The commander, Karen's father, notes that while Henri was unable to fully brainwash the White Cross Knights, she came dangerously close to corrupting Haru, proving that the mortal resistance is still lacking. He deduces that Haru is being specifically targeted for this weakness. The other officers agree that Henri must be taken out before she can use her evil eye, but they are surprised that a mere 16-year-old newbie could be so talented as to warrant such attention. The commander expresses his concern that Henri might start targeting other Imperial knights, but Karen coldly interjects, stating with certainty that Henri is quite fond of Haru and will surely come for him again. A dark, possessive look crosses her face as she thinks of the vixen targeting her boy. At the end of the meeting, she approaches her father with a determined expression and makes a request. A few days later, Haru returns to the Black Hawk guard room, his interregimental training with the White Cross having been cut short by nearly half a month thanks to Karen's strong aspirations. He cheerfully greets his old comrades, who are ecstatic to have him back. Karen welcomes him back with a soft, almost shy expression. The official reason for his early return is that he needs to be thoroughly re-educated by his home unit for the blunder of being captured and almost enticed by the enemy. In reality, this is just a pretext Karen created to keep him by her side. When Haru asks for permission to go pick up some new equipment he ordered, she flatly denies him, stating that in order to re-educate him, she can't let him out of her sight for even a moment, a policy she has enforced ever since his return. Using her authority as captain, Karen has even rented the dorm room right next to Haru's and moved in temporarily. She even abused her power to bring her two-headed pet dog, Cerberus, by exploiting a loophole in the no pets policy. She smirks, thinking that now if anything happens, she can just break down the wall to get to him. Haru points out that she could have just stayed in his room, as he only has one bed and they could snuggle, a suggestion that earns him a furious, blushing shut up from his captain. He knows she's only doing this because she's terrified of Henri appearing out of nowhere and whisking him away, and he can't help but feel a thrill knowing she's just on the other side of the wall. As he lies in bed, he fantasizes about what might have been if he had confessed on their date, imagining them together in the same bed, but he quickly shakes the thoughts away, vowing to focus on protecting Karen and saving any romantic pursuits until after Henri is captured. Meanwhile, Karen sits awake in her own bed, unable to sleep, her mind racing with worry and a strange, unfamiliar heat. The next day, after finishing their paperwork, Haru thinks to himself that if Karen keeps being so overprotective, other problems are bound to arise. His prediction immediately comes true when they enter the dining hall and become the center of attention, with every knight in the room whispering about the demonic knight captain and her young subordinate holding hands and going on dates. The gossip sends Karen into a rage, and she screams at everyone to get the hell out, her fury only making the rumors seem more plausible. When Haru calmly points out the futility of her anger, she snaps at him, declaring that Henri is aiming for her before catching herself and lamely correcting it to my subordinate. Haru calls her out, asking if she's still sticking to the just my subordinate crap after they held hands and went on a date. Cornered and blushing, Karen finally breaks, admitting that he might be just a little bit more special than her other subordinates, just by a single nanometer. That tiny admission is all Haru needs. In that moment, all his fears of rejection are blown away, replaced by a surge of confidence. He decides he can't wait any longer and is about to confess his feelings right there, and then when a towering figure interrupts them, it's the commander, Karen's father, whose presence Haru hadn't sensed at all. The commander dismisses his daughter, stating he only has business with Haru. He orders Karen to proceed on her next mission without him, explaining that they'll be talking for a while. In his office, the commander gets straight to the point, his voice a low growl as he delivers a single, terrifying command to the boy who dares to court his daughter. Stay away from Karen. In his office, Commander Gals lays out his demand with blunt finality. He does not approve of Haru as Karen's partner and is ordering him to break up with her. Haru, stunned, clarifies that they aren't even a couple in the first place, but his denial doesn't matter. With newfound resolve, he boldly declares that he loves Captain Karen as a woman and demands to know the reason for the commander's disapproval. The commander then reveals a shocking truth. Karen isn't his biological daughter. He took her in when she was just a 1-year-old after her real parents, both excellent knights and his trusted comrades, died in the line of duty. He explains that Karen grew up to be a wonderful, obedient girl who never once complained about her strict upbringing, the only exception being when he forbade her from becoming a knight. He knows better than anyone how dangerous the job is and didn't want his most important treasure to meet the same fate as her parents. He wanted her to have a peaceful life, to throw away her sword and start a family, which is why he arranged the marriage meeting in the first place. Haru realizes the commander doesn't care who Karen marries, as long as it gets her to quit being a knight. He then understands the true reason for the commander's rejection. He's afraid that if Karen marries another knight, or continues living as one, she'll be walking the same tragic road as her parents. That the commander admits this is true, but then confesses that part of him actually wants to allow them to be together. He sees Haru's immense potential and knows that in a few years, he'll become the most prominent knight in the capital, someone who could protect Karen from hardship. He's torn between his desire to see her safe and his reluctance to deny her the path she chose for herself. But there's another, more pressing reason for his disapproval. Just as Haru realizes this, the door opens and Madeline walks in, carrying a suitcase full of documents. The commander reveals that he had Madeline investigate Haru's entire life, from his family history to his performance in the academy. He then begins a grueling interrogation, asking Haru to recount the details of his childhood and the day he first realized his magical talent. Haru explains that he was born in a small village and his parents were poor dairy farmers. He discovered his unique magical talent after an encounter with a demon in the mountains and was able to enter the Knight Academy with his tuition waived due to his top exam scores. But as the commander presses for more specific details about the demon encounter, the weather, the demon's appearance, the first magic he ever used, Haru's memory begins to fail him. He struggles to recall the specifics, which is strange for him, as he has a perfect, eidetic memory and has never forgotten anything he's seen. If such a dramatic event had happened, it should be vividly burned into his mind, yet he can't remember the details, the images, or the emotions. The realization dawns on him like a creeping horror. He can't remember what happened that day. In fact, he can't remember anything at all before the age of 12. All his early memories are just a list of events, like reading from a history textbook, with no associated feelings or images. The most mysterious part is that he's never even questioned this gaping hole in his past until this very moment. The shock of this revelation is so profound that he collapses, his mind reeling from the existential crisis. As Madeline rushes to his side, the commander delivers one last devastating blow, telling Haru to give up on Karen. As Haru lies unconscious in the sick bay, his mind is a storm of confusion, questioning his own identity and the very reality of his past. Meanwhile, Karen waits impatiently in her office, growing more and more irritated as the hours pass, wondering what her father could possibly be talking to Haru about for so long. She remembers that Haru had something important to tell her after work, and begins to worry. Finally, the door opens, but it's her father who enters, his face grim. That day, Haru was officially removed from the 4th Cavalry Unit and transferred directly under Commander Galles's command. Haru awakens in the infirmary from a pleasant dream where Karen was praising and patting his head. He sleepily calls out her name, only to see Madeline's face come into view. She apologizes for not being Karen, a comment that brings Haru fully back to reality. Madeline explains that he collapsed in the commander's office. Though he got up briefly, he passed out again immediately afterward. She had been using a tranquilizing incense to help him sleep soundly, admitting they might have stressed him out too much. Desperate for answers, Haru asks her to tell him everything she knows about his past. Madeline agrees, but warns him to stop her if he feels even slightly unwell. She begins by revealing that his unbelievably ordinary background was the first red flag for the commander. For a village to produce a prodigy hailed as the greatest monster, since the founding of the academy was simply too suspicious and quiet. The commander had been independently investigating Haru for some time and formally tasked Madeline with the investigation just before Haru's transfer to the White Cross. Madeline traveled to the address listed for his parents and confirmed they lived there, but something felt off. When she pressed them with specific questions, just as the commander had done with Haru, they dropped their act and confessed the truth. Haru was an orphan they had picked up, despite the official documents claiming he was their biological son. Further investigation confirmed he had no blood relation to them. This leaves Haru reeling, his only year of memories with his supposed parents now revealed as a lie. He wonders if they were forced by some unknown power to act as his parents, and more importantly, who his real parents are and where he was for the first 12 years of his life. And Madeline continues, explaining that she investigated the entire village, But everyone gave the same strange, rehearsed answers regarding Haru. She couldn't find a single trace of him from before he was 12, and regarding his true identity, she has no leads. Haru sinks into despair, realizing that as a man with such a mysterious and potentially dangerous past, it's only natural for a father like the commander to want him nowhere near his daughter. Madeline tells him that as long as he has the potential to be a bomb, he'll never be able to convince the commander, especially since he never wanted Karen to marry a knight in the first place. She tells Haru to rest for the day, informing him that the matter of his past is now a top-secret issue, and that he has already been officially transferred to the 1st Cavalry Unit while he was asleep. The next day, Haru reports to the commander, now wearing the armor of the 1st Unit. The commander assures him that his mysterious origins don't pose a significant problem, as he has a superior work ethic and is adored by the princess. The only real issue is his conduct around Karen. He can't simply exile Haru, as that would be like delivering him straight into Henri's arms. Therefore, he has decided to keep Haru close, working directly under him, where he can personally determine if Haru's existence is safe. If he deems Haru a threat, he will have no choice but to banish him. But if Haru proves himself to be no problem, the commander may consider transferring him back to a unit of his choice. This gives Haru a glimmer of hope. If he works hard and produces results, he can return to Karen's side. He eagerly asks if this means he has the commander's permission to date his daughter, a question that earns him a swift rebuke for his audacity. The commander lays out the terms, no slacking, and any defiant attitude will be classified as a problem. Reinvigorated with a new goal, Haru finds himself back on a mission with the White Cross, where he runs into Mulberry. She is thrilled to be rivals with him once again, a sentiment that leaves Haru wondering if his constant teasing has turned her into a masochist. He apologizes to his former teammates for his sudden return, explaining that he's under orders from higher up as he sets his mind to the task at hand, ready to prove himself and earn his way back to Karen. Haru, now transferred to the 1st Cavalry Unit, is determined to work hard and get good results so he can return to Karen's side. On a mission with the White Cross to exterminate monsters on a southern island, Mulberry challenges him to a competition. But their rivalry is cut short when a massive jellyfish-like monster captures Mulberry, holding her in a humiliating, spread eagle pose. As her teammates panic, Haru calmly directs them to stick to the plan. Mulberry feels her life energy being drained by the creature's tentacles, but a far greater horror grips her, the fear that Haru will see something shameful. In a burst of desperate strength, she slices through the tentacles, freeing herself and vowing that she won't let him see that. She calls for magical support, and Haru fires a blast of energy, but his aim is off. The shot goes wide, grazing Mulberry's side and knocking her to the ground. Horrified, Haru realizes he fired without properly establishing a target, a rookie mistake born from the psychological trauma of his recent discoveries. The other knights are shocked at his carelessness, but before they can react, Commander Gals leaps into action, telling everyone to get back as he single-handedly slays the monster with a powerful strike. For the next few days, Haru is completely useless in the field. No matter how hard he tries, his body refuses to move the way he wants, his mind plagued with doubts about the commander's true intentions and his own fractured past. His performance is so poor that his new squad mates openly mock him, calling the former valedictorian a disappointment and a hindrance. That night, sitting alone on the castle steps, Haru is consumed by self-loathing. He knows his poor performance stems from a tactical over-reliance. He had memorized every battle tactic in advance and simply moved his body accordingly, but the recent revelations have shattered his mental foundation, leaving him unable to fight. He hasn't seen Karen since the day he collapsed in her father's office, and has been ordered to stay at the house of a White Cross vice captain named Ivan for his own protection. Though he's made several trips back to the dormitory to collect his things, Karen's demanding work schedule has kept them apart, and he worries she may have moved out of the room next to his. Despondent but not broken, he reaffirms his determination to do his best and get back to her side. But he's haunted by the question of his own identity, wondering if a potential monster like him is even worthy of being with her. Suddenly, he hears a voice call his name and looks up to see Karen standing at the top of the stairs. He finds himself in the basement of the 4th Cavalry Unit, having unconsciously wandered there while lost in thought. Karen looks at him and he notices that she seems to be crying. Haru tries to deny it, but tears are streaming down his face, an unconscious release of all the pain and confusion he's been holding in since their separation. He confesses that he came because he was worried about her and his old unit, and just seeing her face made everything flood out. Karen gently pulls him into a hug, telling him he doesn't have to put up a front anymore, and that he's the most important thing to her right now. She holds him tightly, ignoring the passing nights, and doesn't let go until he stops crying. Later that night, back in Karen's dorm room, Haru is surprised to find that she is still living there. He looks around the now spotless room and reminisces about the time they cleaned it together, discovering her secret hobby of making handmade plushies. As he's lost in thought, Karen's dog, Cerberus, playfully grabs one of the plushies, one that happens to look exactly like him. Karen, fresh from the shower and wrapped only in a towel, bursts into the room and frantically tries to snatch the doll back, insisting it's just a generic stress toy she uses to beat up. She then realizes she just ran down the hall nearly naked and demands that Haru not look, kicking him in the face for his unreasonable compliance. After she's dressed, she explains that she's staying in the dorm because if he were there, she wouldn't be able to protect him due to their different schedules. Now that he's living with a vice commander, however, she feels he's safe enough, and there's no longer a reason for her to stay. She pats the bed beside her, telling him to hurry up and come over. Haru hesitates, and she teases him for not jumping at the chance like he usually would. He nervously sits down and asks if he can hold her hand. She calls him spoiled but gives her permission. And as their hands touch, Haru is overwhelmed by his feelings. He knows a suspicious man like him should be separated from her immediately, but for this one moment, he allows himself to be selfish, wishing it could last forever, even if his entire origin is a lie. A lone knight stands cloaked in shadow, his past a complete enigma. He knows neither his real family nor his birthplace, his origins shrouded in top-secret mystery, a truth he is certain even Karen knows nothing about. Elsewhere, Karen herself is lost in thought, her mind plagued by suspicions and anxiety. She recalls a conversation with Commander Galleys, the man who was persuaded to let the boy, Haru, join the 1st Cavalry Unit, and she can't shake the memory of her own troubled expression at that time. The scene shifts to a quiet room where Haru and Karen sit together on a bed, their two fox-like companions sleeping peacefully on the floor. Karen breaks the silence, asking Haru if her father, Commander Galleys, is being strict with him. Haru admits that Galleys is strict, but clarifies that his instructions are always calm and precise, earning him the trust of everyone in the unit. Karen smiles, remarking that it sounds just like him, and that he hasn't changed at all since she was a child, always thinking about her. She begins to tell a story from before she entered the Night Academy, a memory from her preschool entrance ceremony. Her dad had been unable to attend due to an urgent mission. As a 6-year-old girl, she stood alone while all the other children had their parents watching over them. Feeling a profound loneliness she tried to dismiss, knowing his duties as a captain couldn't be helped. But then, the auditorium doors burst open and her father appeared, still clad in his armor, his body covered in blood and his wounds still fresh. He had defeated a demon as fast as humanly possible and rushed there on foot just to see her, causing an uproar among the parents and teachers. Laughing softly at the memory, Karen tells Haru that while she and Galleys may not share the same blood, he is without a doubt her one and only father. Haru looks at her, realizing she is truly important to the commander. Karen continues, saying she owes him a debt she can never repay, a sentiment Haru shares. This reminds her of something she found in the back of her closet while preparing to move into the dormitory. She shows Haru an old essay she wrote as a child, a piece titled, "My Dream for the Future Is." In her youthful handwriting, she declared her dream was to become the cutest bride in the world. She confessed she actually wanted to marry her daddy, but he had told her that was impossible. She resolved to find someone she loved just as much as him and marry them instead. Haru can't help but call the essay cute, while Karen squirms with embarrassment, her face burning as she rereads her childhood words. Haru teases her, observing that she has loved Gal's son ever since she was young. Karen quickly clarifies that she doesn't want to marry him anymore, explaining that she wrote it back when she didn't know what love truly was. She turns to Haru, her expression softening as she confesses that it feels strange how relaxed she is around him, feeling an urge to reveal everything about herself only when he is near. Looking into his eyes, she tells him that she's heard it all, that she knows about the feelings he has for her. Haru's expression darkens slightly, a flicker of pain in his eyes. She continues, her voice filled with a gentle warmth, acknowledging that even after she turned him down once, he still cared for her and loved someone as crude and violent as she was. She admits that his feelings made her happy. A glimmer of hope appears in Haru's eyes, but Karen's next words shatter it completely. She grips the sheets, her voice filled with regret, and apologizes, telling him she can't go out with him. The words hit Haru like a physical blow. His mind goes blank as he tries to process her rejection. He asks, why? Karen explains that her father told her directly that he doesn't approve of them having a relationship, words she honestly couldn't accept. She had even considered quitting the nights and eloping with him, but she couldn't bring herself to betray her father any more than she already had when she chose to become a knight against his strong objections. From an overhead view, the room is cast in darkness as she lies on the bed, confessing that she just can't do it. She explains that the deeper one gets into a relationship, from dating to marriage, the less it becomes about what's best for the individual. Haru clenches his fists, a tear falling from his eye, understanding her painful logic all too well. Karen sits up, pleading with him not to hate her dad, insisting he's just thinking of them in his own way. An unpleasant emotion wells up in Haru's chest as she continues, telling him not to chase an old hag like her when there are so many women younger and prettier than she is. With tears in her eyes, she makes a promise. As his captain, she will be there to lend him her chest and hold his hand whenever he feels depressed or like crying, until the day he meets his true love. But her words only deepen his despair. He looks away, his voice cold, asking her to be honest with him. He accuses her of not liking him from the beginning. His anguish finally explodes into a furious, tear-streaked shout, demanding to know how she'd ever see a boy 13 years younger than her as a man. He screams that she was just messing with him, pretending to like him, and that her supposed happiness was a lie. He accuses her of blaming her father simply because she didn't want to reject him outright. In a flash of anger and hurt, Karen slaps him hard across the face. The impact leaves a red mark on his cheek as he stares at the floor, stunned and heartbroken, while Karen herself begins to weep uncontrollably. After a tense silence, she asks him if he really thinks she's that kind of person. Haru, his own tears flowing, quietly replies that he doesn't. He knows she's just clumsy and that she was all alone until he found her. But the painful truth remains. She has rejected him once again. He tells her that if this is how it has to be, she must stop leading him on. He demands that she no longer sit next to him, hold his hand, or seek his comfort when she's depressed. Wiping away a tear, he tells her it's cruel to keep him in this limbo. She must either accept him or reject him completely. Karen sobs, apologizing and admitting that she never realized she was leading him on. Haru looks at her, his voice low and steady, and asks her one last time if she likes him. Internally, Karen is tormented. She wanted to stay with him for as long as she could, but she knew they would eventually have to separate, a reality that forces her to remain silent. She can only offer a tearful apology, calling herself a coward. For Haru, that single word confirms everything. He knows this is the end. Without another word, he bolts from the room, running away from her. Karen calls his name, begging him not to go, but it's too late. Haru weeps the entire way as he runs along the dark road home. In another part of town, a woman named Madeline pores over ancient texts and documents. She mutters to herself that no matter how much research she does, she can't find any spell or magic tool that could alter the memories of an entire village, leaving her to wonder just what the hell Haru is. Compounding her frustration, she reveals that the old man also wants her to find a new marriage candidate for Karen. As she gets up to make coffee, she glances out the window and is startled to see a figure standing outside. It's Karen, alone in the dead of night. Madeline rushes outside, asking what she's doing here. Karen collapses into her friend's arms, crying out her name in despair. Madeline comforts her, bringing her inside and offering a warm drink while she waits in her room. Karen sits in the cluttered study, surrounded by books and magical tools, a familiar sight. As Madeline walks down the hall with 2 mugs of coffee, she enters the room and stops dead in her tracks. She sees Karen holding a document from her desk. A careless mistake on Madeline's part. The paper is a file on Haru, with his photo prominently displayed. Karen's eyes are wide with shock and confusion as she stares at a single, terrifying word written on the page: unidentified. Inside the pristine, white-tiled corridors of the castle, the atmosphere is a mix of clinical precision and lingering tension following the recent suppression of the bandits. The female members of the 1st Cavalry Unit are ushered through the grand hallways, their destination a thorough medical examination designed to root out any lingering magical maladies. These healers, distinguishable by their robes and glasses, are experts in both medicine and sorcery, scanning for subtle magical signatures like hallucinations, suggestions, or charms that might have been planted during the chaos of battle. While one healer declares a night clear of any mystical tampering, another check is performed nearby, ensuring that no member of the Imperial Knight Regiment becomes a sleeper agent for the enemy. However, paranoia lingers among the ranks. A blonde knight voices a terrifying possibility, asking what would happen if the inspectors themselves had already fallen into the hands of the enemy leader, Henri. It is a valid fear, but Vice Captain Mayura dismisses it with logic, pointing out that the inspectors cross-examine each other to ensure absolute integrity. The 5th Cavalry Unit is renowned for having the highest magic resistance among the Imperial Knights, making them the only ones capable of such a delicate task. Furthermore, the terrifying doctor in the plague mask leading them inspires a certain level of fearful confidence that they are not easily trifled with. Haru, observing the proceedings, notes with a heavy heart that if there truly were a magician capable of controlling such a high-level unit simultaneously, the rest of them wouldn't stand a chance anyway. It is a grim realization, but one that Mayura quickly diffuses, claiming she was merely joking to lighten the mood. Though her humor often borders on the terrifying, the narrative shifts to the aftermath of the fort's capture. A massive bounty of 7 million has been placed on Henri's head, turning her into a nationally wanted fugitive, yet she remains elusive, leaving no traces for the hunters to follow. While the search for the ringleader continues in the forests and towns, the knights have other pressing concerns, specifically the eradication of the remaining demons that infest the land. In the dense woodlands, the mop-up operation is in full swing. Knights clash with shadowy, spherical demons, their blades slicing through the corrupted air. The battle is fierce, but the knights are struggling against a particular superior demon that possesses a slippery, elusive body, making it difficult to land a killing blow. This creature, seemingly mocking them with a dark chuckle, retreats into the canopy, merging with the environment to evade their steel. It is here that Haru's unique talents shine. Vice Captain Mayura watches as Haru steps forward, preparing to engage the superior demon that has cornered them. With a focus that betrays his youthful appearance, Haru casts a transformation spell. He does not aim to overpower the demon with brute force, but to outwit it. The demon, confident in its superior form, is suddenly subjected to Haru's magic. In a flash of magical energy, the terrifying creature is reduced to a harmless, bewildered sphere, stripping it of its combat advantages. The other knights watch in awe as Haru asserts that they are the sole bearers of security in the imperial capital. With the demon neutralized and vulnerable, the squad descends upon it, finishing the job with ruthless efficiency. Mira praises Haru's coordination and lack of hesitation, noting how much he has grown from the timid boy she once worried about. The sheer skill displayed by Haru leaves his comrades stunned. One knight marvels at how Haru cast a transformation so subtle that even a sensitive demon couldn't detect it until it was too late, taking out a superior threat in a single blow. The team gathers in the forest clearing, the tension of battle dissipating into relief and admiration. Even the veteran knights acknowledge that with Haru operating at this level, even the elusive Henri might not be much of an issue if they cross paths. There is a sentiment among the team that it would be a shame to lose such a talent, with one member wishing Haru could stay with their unit permanently. However, the commander notes that it will be a while before Haru returns to his original unit, implying that his future is currently in flux. Haru, overhearing this, smiles wryly, wondering aloud if he even wants to go back at all, hinting at the emotional turmoil brewing beneath his calm exterior. When asked what he means, he deflects, urging everyone to get back to work. Mayura explains the hierarchy of the knights, claiming that as his superior, her word is absolute, and she orders him to use his transformation magic to make Karen look like these fantasies so she can sell the pictures as original bromides. Haru is visibly flustered, sweating profusely at the absurdity and danger of such a request. Haru tries to explain the limitations of his magic, stating that transforming a living dragon into a tiny tree or changing the fundamental structure of a creature's body is incredibly difficult and temporary. He clarifies that the smallest thing he can transform into is a medium-sized dog, and that casting spells on others is far more taxing than self-transformation. Mayura, disappointed but undeterred, praises his ability to change his own appearance at will. Realizing he took her joke too seriously, Mayura backpedals, claiming she was just kidding, though the sweat on her brow suggests she was mostly serious about the bromides. The levity is cut short as the day winds down. Haru stands with Mulberry, his childhood friend and fellow knight, who stares at him with a mixture of concern and suspicion. Haru maintains a placid, almost empty smile, a mask he has worn since the day he believes Karen rejected him. Mulberry is not fooled. She glares at him, her expression hardening as she senses the hollowness in his demeanor. The sky outside darkens, stars peppering the night as the work shift officially ends. As the knights celebrate their freedom, bidding Haru farewell for the day, Haru walks away with a heavy sense of finality, grateful to be free not just from work, but from the painful proximity to his heartbreak. He walks alone down the opulent hallway, his sword at his hip, looking small against the grandeur of the castle. But he doesn't get far. A voice calls out, demanding he wait. It is Mulberry, refusing to let him slip away into the night. She stands in the middle of the hallway, hands on her hips, blocking his path with an assertive stance that demands answers. Haru stops, asking what she wants, his voice devoid of its usual warmth. He tries to dismiss her, stating he wants to get going. Mulberry confronts him directly, asking what is wrong with him, her eyes searching for the friend she knows is hiding behind that cold facade. Haru deflects, claiming nothing is wrong, and that he is finally back to how he was before, but Mulberry calls his bluff, asserting that he is not the same Haru anymore. She tells him that winning against him while he is in this pathetic state would feel empty, offering to listen to his troubles if he is willing to share. Haru's response is cold and cutting. He turns away, stating that he doesn't care about being her rival in the first place. He looks at her with dead eyes, telling her to stay out of other people's private lives, delivering the harshest blow yet. That she is neither his family nor his lover, but merely a stranger with no connection to him. He attempts to walk away, reiterating that he exists only as a complete stranger, leaving Mulberry stunned and trembling with rising anger. The insult pierces her, her face flushing not with sorrow, but with righteous fury. Mulberry explodes. She screams at him, hurling a barrage of creative insults, calling him a bird-brained, differently abled, neurodivergent retard, her voice echoing through the hall. Haru is shocked, his cold mask cracking under the sheer volume of her verbal abuse, never expecting such vitriol from her. But Mulberry isn't done. She lunges at him, tackling him with the full force of her knightly training. They crash to the floor, the impact reverberating through the corridor. Haru lies pinned beneath her, confused and breathless, asking why she is doing this. Mulberry, straddling him to keep him in place, yells with tears in her eyes, demanding to know why both he and Captain Karen are such fools who refuse to talk to her. The mention of Captain Karen freezes Haru. Suddenly, the door opens, and Vice Captain Mayura and the captain appear, drawn by the commotion. They find the two knights in a compromising position on the floor, surrounded by a magical glow. Mayura comments on how weird and unpleasant everyone has been acting lately. Mulberry, ignoring the intrusion, looks down at Haru with intense emotion. She admits she isn't his family or his girlfriend, but then, with tears streaming down her face, she screams the truth that Haru has been trying to deny. "I'm your goddamn fucking friend. Do not call me a stranger again." The raw honesty of her declaration shatters Haru's defenses. His eyes widen, the dullness replaced by shock and recognition. The scene shifts to the quiet outside of the castle under the moonlight, where the adrenaline fades into a somber conversation. In a dimly lit office under the light of a full moon, Captain Karen sits alone, her expression a mask of profound sadness as she rests her head in her hand. Her quiet contemplation is broken by an unwelcome voice asking why she looks so troubled. The figure steps out of the shadows, revealing a woman with short black hair and a sinister eye patch Henri, a ghost from their past, who greets her with a chilling smile, remarking that it has been a long time. Henri's tone is laced with triumph as she announces that her preparations are finally complete, taunting Karen about whether she has stopped following that boy around before, promising a very fun show is about to begin. Elsewhere, that very boy, Haru, is sprinting through the city streets with desperate urgency. He's acting on pure, unthinking impulse, having started running towards Karen-san without a concrete plan. His mind is a whirlwind of confusion. He doesn't know what to say to her or what he'll even do when he gets there. But one thought cuts through the chaos with absolute, undeniable clarity. He cannot spend another moment without her. As he runs, a familiar figure named Mulberry watches him from a doorway, noting to herself that Haru is zooming off to find Karen. Overcome with anxiety and a desperate need to know the outcome, she decides she must follow, convincing herself that it will be fine to just eavesdrop for a bit. Haru, however, senses her immediately, a weary expression crossing his face as he realizes Mulberry is following him yet again, a tiresome repeat of their days back at the academy. He pushes the thought aside and bursts into the castle, running through its vast, empty corridors. He reasons Karen must still be at work, but his search is cut short when he sees Commander Galleys and another knight rushing towards him with panicked expressions. The commander shouts Haru's name, and Haru, his heart sinking, immediately demands to know about Karen. Their frantic search leads them down a grand staircase, where they come to a horrifying halt. Their path is completely blocked by a shimmering wall of dark, ominous magic, sealing the corridor to the fourth unit and radiating a malevolent energy. The other knights arrive on the scene, recognizing the powerful barrier immediately. A mage from the fifth unit confirms their worst fears, stating this is Henri's magic and her target was undoubtedly Karen. Commander Galleys grimly observes that a barrier of this magnitude couldn't have been erected on the spot, a conclusion the mage supports by showing a map of the area, explaining that Henri must have infiltrated the castle multiple times to lay this trap. This would have required either advanced transformation magic or her mind-controlling evil eye, both of which should have been caught by the fifth unit's inspections, casting a shadow of suspicion over their security. Upon the dark magical wall, glowing runes appear, spelling out a terrifying ultimatum. If they want Karen to be released, they must bring Haru to Henri before the sun rises. If they fail, all that will remain of Karen will be a corpse. Overcome with rage and terror, Haru draws his purification sword, intending to smash through the barrier with raw power. But Commander Galleys grabs his shoulder, stopping him and warning that this is exactly what the enemy wants. He tells Haru to wait, explaining that they've contacted the sorcerers who had gone home for the day, including Madeline, and they need to wait for everyone to get back. Haru clenches his jaw, knowing the commander is right. This barrier is far stronger than the last one he faced. If he pours all his mana into the sword now, he'll be completely drained by the time he reaches the dungeon, setting himself up for a repeat of his last humiliating capture. The only logical strategy is to wait for the fifth unit's counter magic and Madeline's tools to break the barrier in a single, coordinated assault. But the cold, hard truth is that even with their combined strength, it would take until morning to break through, far too late to meet Henri's deadline. Meanwhile, behind the magical wall, Karen slowly regains consciousness. She finds herself stripped down to her lingerie and suspended in mid-air, her limbs bound by writhing tendrils of dark magic. Henri stands before her, a smug look on her face, remarking that Karen doesn't look too happy and that she should be grateful for providing this opportunity. Karen glares, recognizing the binding magic that holds her powerless. Henri begins her psychological torment, asking if Karen is lonely now that Haru has returned to the White Cross, mocking how they were inseparable until recently. She cruelly brands Karen a disgusting, Shota-loving captain for having fallen for a rookie knight half her age. Furious, Karen retorts that she never made any advances and only stuck close to Haru because Henri was hunting him. She insists Haru is merely her subordinate, but Henri sees through the facade with a knowing look. The argument devolves, with Karen demanding to know Henri's age, shouting that she won't be called disgusting by a common bandit. Henri reveals she's 25, only 4 years older than Haru, while Karen is nearly 30, doubling down on her insult. Henri's expression then shifts from mockery to fervent obsession as she declares that starting today, Haru will belong to her. Her magic flares violently as she becomes visibly aroused, confessing that thirst is the source of her power, and she's never felt such a surge before now. She tells a bound Karen not to worry, promising she will make sure Haru is happy. She uncorks it and drinks the contents, a temporary magic-boosting drug that she casually admits is only very slightly illegal. Through the torment, Karen's will remains unbroken, her thoughts focused on one person. She silently vows that Haru is hers, and she will never let Henri have him. Henri adds another layer of cruelty, revealing that the slime has another special skill. The more Karen struggles, the more she gets electrocuted. Karen's agonized screams finally pierce the magical barrier, echoing down the hall where Haru and the others stand helpless. Haru screams her name in horror. Henri's disembodied voice then speaks through the barrier, addressing him directly. She tells him she knows he's there and commands him to use his purification sword to come to her, warning that the more time that passes, the more Karen will suffer. Commander Gallus desperately pleads with Henri to stop, offering a reduced sentence if she surrenders, knowing full well that they have no way of breaking the barrier before morning. Haunted by memories of a younger, innocent Karen, Haru is finally pushed over the edge. He roars for them to wait. As Commander Gallus tries to restrain him, Haru's eyes blaze with a terrifying, unhinged light. He snarls that there is no one else who can save her, only he can. In a shocking display of raw power, he effortlessly throws the massive Commander Gallus aside as if he were a fly. He turns to face the barrier, his sword glowing with immense power, and declares that he will take Karen back, even if he has to sacrifice himself, even if he is no longer himself when it's over. Just as he prepares to make his final, desperate charge, a swift chop comes down on the back of his neck. It is Madeline, who has arrived at the last possible second. She looks down at the stunned Haru with cold determination, telling him there's no way in hell she's letting him go when he has so obviously lost his composure, vowing she will do anything to make sure of that. Haru stands determined, asking Madeline if she intends to stop him from going after Karen, and she bluntly confirms that she does. He presses her for a reason, his voice laced with frustration, but her response is not one of opposition, but of deep understanding. She tells him she knows what it's like to want to be a hero for the people you care about, to help the one you love. Her words are soft, full of an empathy that catches him off guard. Before he can react, she closes the distance between them, wrapping him in a warm embrace and confessing that she truly cares for him. Leaning in close, Madeline playfully calls him cute, honest, and a bit too clever for his own good, teasing that if she were single, she would have already stolen him away while Karen was busy feigning indifference. A deep blush creeps across Haru's face as he begs her to stop teasing him, his flustered reaction only earning a soft chuckle from her. Their intense conversation is abruptly cut short by the arrival of a unit of sorcerers who shove their way down the corridor, demanding everyone make a hole for them to pass. As the chaos unfolds, Madeline's mind flashes back to the night Karen had broken things off with Haru. She remembers finding Karen in a horrible state, clutching a document detailing Haru's mysterious past and unknown identity. The memory is vivid, Karen weeping, confessing that she felt she wasn't qualified to even hug him. She had finally realized how truly alone Haru was, yet felt powerless, admitting she would never go against her own father to be with him. Back in the present, Madeline reveals this painful truth to Haru, explaining that Karen's childhood was distorted by the immense pressure placed upon her. She was constantly torn between her duty to become an adult and her desire to remain the little girl she had always been. Because of her noble parents, her origins, her age, and her position as a captain, she was never allowed to act selfishly like a child, forcing her to bottle up her true feelings for years. It was precisely at this moment of extreme vulnerability, when her mental state was at its absolute weakest, that the enemy struck and captured her. The weight of this revelation crushes Haru, and he can't stop the tears from welling in his eyes as he finally understands the depth of Karen's suffering. Madeline then poses a chilling question, asking him to consider what would happen if he sacrificed himself to save her. She lays out the grim reality. While he might gain the satisfaction of being a hero for his beloved, Karen's heart would shatter into a million pieces, and she would be forced to live with the unbearable guilt for the rest of her life. Madeline looks him dead in the eye, telling him that this is the real reason she is stopping him from throwing his life away. She gently places a hand on his head, her voice softening as she tells him he is strong, a strength the Night Order will need for years to come. For that very reason, She and the other adults present will not stand by and allow him to make such a foolish sacrifice. With new resolve in her eyes, Madeline asks him to tell her again what he plans to do. After a long, pensive moment, Haru makes his decision. He bows deeply before his superiors, his voice firm as he declares his intention to save Karen-san, but adds a crucial condition. He must also return safely. He humbly asks them to lend him their strength. A hand gently pats his head, and a warm smile spreads across Madeleine's face. That, she says, is what she had been waiting to hear. Later, Commander Galles confronts Madeleine, questioning her decision to let Haru go. She calmly explains that she isn't just letting him go. She is formulating a plan that will ensure both Haru and Karen return safely, warning that a reckless charge would be playing right into their enemy Henri's hands. Another night, Mulberry steps forward, confidently stating she will stick with Haru to the very end. Madeline reveals their plan hinges on the unique characteristics of the enemy's evil eye, though she admits it will be a risky biscuit. In her thoughts, she sends a message to the captive Karen, telling the princess she'll have to wait just a little longer for her knight in shining armor. Henri taunts her, asking how she managed to infiltrate the castle. Henri casually morphs her body, her frame swelling with muscle as she dons a helmet, transforming into a hulking warrior. The imposter admits they aren't as skilled as Haru, but smugly asks if their performance isn't still impressive. Karen, sweating under the pressure, retorts that the fifth squad would have detected any transformation magic during inspection. The imposter explains that teleporting would have been just as foolish, as the sudden increase in the number of people within the castle walls would have immediately alerted the knights. Henri grabs Karen's hair, her voice dripping with menace as she threatens to gouge out one of her eyes. She cruelly paints a picture of sending the eyeball in a gift box to her friends, knowing it would cause Haru to panic and rush blindly to the rescue. Just as she contemplates the best method of delivery, a sound from behind the reinforced door signals Haru's arrival. A wicked grin spreads across Henri's face. He has come at last. In a final act of psychological torture, Henri crudely adjusts Karen's bra, sneering that she wouldn't want her darling Haru to see anything vulgar. The door swings open to reveal Haru, his face a mask of cold fury. The person he believes to be Henri greets him with a sinister smile, welcoming him to their promised reunion and asking if he is prepared to become hers. Karen cries out his name in warning, but Haru is already engaged. He claims he would have preferred to forget their promise, but Henri dismisses this, stating she has already decided he belongs to her. Haru then drops Commander Galles' broken sword, noting a grim similarity between them. They both use any means necessary to achieve their goals. Henri mockingly points out that the purification sword was no match for her barrier and draws a poisoned knife, holding it to Karen's throat and demanding Haru discard the sword at his hip. Karen, despite her terror, urges him to stay back, but her defiance earns her a brutal punch to the face from Henri, who screams at her to shut her mouth. The sight snaps Haru's composure, and he yells for Henri to stop, agreeing to throw away his weapon. He tosses his own to the ground, a move that piques Henri's curiosity. She asks why he used Galles' sword to break the barrier, accusing him of saving his own to strike her down. Haru simply replies he wasn't sure one sword would be enough. Henri smugly invites him closer, and despite Karen's desperate pleas, he begins to walk forward. His enemy, his only request being the release of Captain Karen. Henri caresses his face, her touch like ice as she compliments his beautiful skin. Then, her eye begins to glow, a hypnotic spiral swirling within it. She unleashes her evil eye, declaring him her puppet from now on. Henri gloats, telling him the command will be permanently etched into his mind, promising a lifetime of servitude and her twisted affection. Karen screams for it to stop, but Henri suddenly freezes, a look of confusion on her face. Something is terribly wrong. She touches the boy's shoulder, unable to comprehend what has happened. A malicious grin twists the boy's features. He sneers that she only thought he was Haru. The illusion shatters, revealing Mulberry, who triumphantly announces her true identity. Henri stares in disbelief, unable to process how his gestures and expressions were so perfect, her mind racing as she realizes the real Haru is still unaccounted for. On the floor, the sword Haru had discarded begins to glow, reshaping itself into its true form. Haru himself. Wasting no time, he leaps to his feet and charges at the stunned Henri, taking advantage of her distraction. As he closes the distance, a flashback reveals the brilliant strategy conceived just 10 minutes prior. Haru had transformed Mulberry into his perfect clone and turned himself into a sword. Madeline had correctly predicted that Henri's evil eye would be significantly weakened when used on a misidentified target. Mulberry, after donning a chest binder and taking a mostly legal enhancement drug, had flawlessly mimicked Haru's movements to break the invisible barrier, accepting the high-stakes role with unshakable confidence. Commander Gals had approved the risky but calculated gamble, taking full responsibility for the operation. The plan unfolds perfectly. In the present, Haru drives his fist deep into Henri's stomach, the force of the blow echoing through the room as their carefully laid trap snaps shut. The battle erupts as Henri instantly erects a magic barrier, deflecting Haru's punch with a shimmering wall of energy. With a sharp command not to move, she unleashes a binding spell, freezing him in place as she sneers at his impertinence. She's astounded that he still has so much magic left after shattering her first barrier, a feat Haru internally attributes to the potent magic-enhancing drugs coursing through his veins. Henri admits she knew he had a trick up his sleeve, while nearby, the paralyzed Mulberry groans that the evil eye's power is immense even when misdirected. Henri coolly compliments Haru's skill, acknowledging that his perfect transformation magic would have fooled anyone but her. But her praise is laced with venom as she taunts him that his gambit has failed. Her eye flashes with a hypnotic spiral as she declares checkmate, unleashing the full force of her power upon him. Her voice invades his mind, a chilling whisper commanding him to become her slave. Haru grits his teeth, realizing with dawning horror that this magic is far stronger than what she used on Mulberry. He feels his body being crushed by her will, but a single thought gives him strength. He will always belong to Karen-san, and he refuses to submit. Henri's shadowy form looms over him, her voice a chorus of domination, insisting that he is now hers and hers alone. His body begins to petrify, his strength fading as he realizes this may be his limit. Henri closes in, stroking his hair and calling him a naive kid for bringing a sword he never intended to use. As Mulberry cries his name in despair, Henri mockingly suggests that as her puppet, he should start by attacking his friends without hesitation. But in that moment of apparent defeat, Henri notices something is wrong. The sword at his hip is merely an empty sheath. Her eyes dart upwards to see the real sword embedded in a glowing magic circle on the ceiling. Haru's true plan is revealed in a flash. This was his contingency. The sword pulses with energy, and the magical bindings holding Karen shatter. Now free, Karen tells him she is leaving the rest to him. But she has her own score to settle. As Henri stares in shock, Karen lunges forward and delivers a brutal uppercut, roaring for Henri to keep her filthy hands off her Haru. The force of the blow sends Henri flying. In her last moments of consciousness, Henri understands the depth of her miscalculation. At the exact moment Haru attacked her, he had thrown his purification sword to free Karen, a brilliant two-pronged assault. She hits the floor, admitting her utter defeat. With the battle over, the paralysis lifts, and Mulberry can finally move again. Karen immediately whirls on Haru, grabbing him by the shoulders and screaming that he's a fucking idiot for his reckless plan. But her rage instantly dissolves into overwhelming relief, and she pulls him into a desperate, trembling hug. Exhausted and emotionally drained, Haru buries his face in her shoulder, asking her to forgive him and just let him stay like this for a moment. Blushing through her tears, Karen wordlessly tightens her embrace, softly allowing it. Just then, the barrier outside vanishes and Commander Gales bursts in, only to freeze at the sight of his scantily clad daughter in another man's arms. As Mulberry cheekily congratulates Haru on his success, Madeline has to physically drag the stunned commander away, chiding him for staring. In the quiet aftermath, Karen holds Haru close, murmuring that he always makes her worry. A few days later in the castle courtyard, she formally thanks him for the rescue. He brushes it off, stating he would always put himself at risk for her. Taking a deep breath, Haru looks her dead in the eye and asks her to go out with him. Karen is stunned, her face turning crimson. She turns away, muttering that he never learns, and explains that she cannot accept. Her father, the Supreme Commander, is a man she cannot betray, and a relationship between them could jeopardize Haru's entire future. She asks why he'd want an old hag like her anyway, but Haru silences her with a resounding no. He declares that he will never love anyone else. He tells her to stop treating him like a child, his voice ringing with absolute conviction as he proclaims that he loves Karen-san more than anything else in the entire world. Even with no memory of his past, his love for her is the one truth he holds on to, and he will not back down. He presses her, pointing out that she's avoiding the real question, and demands she look him in the eyes and tell him how she truly feels. Cornering her against a tree, he gives her an ultimatum. Does she like him, or does she hate him? Trapped and overwhelmed, Karen finally relents, promising to tell him everything. But faced with confession, she becomes a flustered, blushing wreck, completely overheating as she struggles to find the words.